Chapter 462. Who are you? The green-robed elder shouted. He did not feel the slightest bit of aura from this person, but he could not help but become alert. How could someone who dared to appear at this time be an ordinary person? Instinctively, he felt that this person was not simple. Pa. The silver-masked man did not answer. Instead, he walked step by step towards Gray. Finally, he stood side by side with Gray. Their purpose of advancing and retreating together was self-evident. Which family are you from? Are you sure you want to stand up for him? The green-clothed elder's voice turned cold when he did not get a reply. However, the silver-masked man stood side by side with Gray and still had no intention of speaking. You have to think carefully. Is it worth it to make an enemy out of the Nahum family for him? Being ignored, the green-clothed elder's voice turned cold. Whoosh! Still not getting a reply, the green-clothed elder directly attacked. He unsheathed his sword and slashed in the air. Suddenly, a huge wind blade attacked Gray. He also attacked Gray with a wind blade, but the wind blade he slashed out was much stronger than the previous two desolate blood elders. The huge wind blade looked like it was made of green metal. It was extremely wide, and there were many small wind blades on its surface. Along the way, trees collapsed, and the ground was filled with crisscrossing marks. This kind of power was much stronger than Gray's black fog, which had barely reached the second level of the desolated level. This was also the reason why the other party did not take Gray seriously. The power of the Blood Fiend was stronger than Gray's. In addition, its speed and strength were superior to Gray's. He had the strength to not take Gray seriously. Instead, he looked more at the masked man who had suddenly appeared. He could not see through this man. Whoosh! Just as the wind blade was about to hit Gray, the silver-masked man beside Gray moved. Whoosh! He took a step forward and blocked Gray's path. He unsheathed his sword and slashed. The whole action was done in one breath. Gotcha! The huge wind blade was like a piece of glass that had collided with a rock. With the center as the center, a huge crack appeared. The crack spread, and eventually it completely collapsed. The wind blade, which had reached the second level of the desolated level, was shattered by the masked man's blade. Broken wind blades sputtered in all directions. The ground was crisscrossed with rocks and dirt, but Gray, who was behind the man with the silver metal mask, was not harmed at all. He actually blocked it. In the distance, the Nahum family looked at the silver-masked man with astonishment. To be able to block an attack from a desolate grade level 2, the opponent's strength should be at least at this level. Behind Gray Fergus, there was an expert who was at least in the second level of the desolation grade. Although he had vaguely guessed that the opponent's strength was not weak when he appeared, he still couldn't help but feel shocked when the opponent displayed the battle strength of at least level 2 of the desolation grade. They finally felt that the development of the situation was out of their control. Perhaps the Nahum family would suffer a huge loss today and become a joke among the nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom. The blade in his hand is a broken blade. As the flying rocks fell, the silhouette of the man with the silver metal mask became clear. Suddenly, Warner Nahum exclaimed. Warner Nahum and Nathan Nahum, who were the two strongest members of the younger generation of the Nahum family, were naturally brought along for this opportunity to witness a battle between experts. Previously, due to the flying rocks blocking their field of vision, the members of the Nahum family were unable to clearly see that the weapon in the other party's hand was a broken sword. A broken blade? A desolate grade level 2 expert is holding a broken blade? The Nahum family almost thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them. A level 2 desolation level expert was definitely a top-notch expert, no matter which family he was in. However, such an expert's weapon was a broken saber. What kind of family would give a level 2 desolation level expert a broken saber? Behind the man with the silver metal mask, Gray's expression was calm. He was not surprised that the man with the silver metal mask could block the wind blade. The man with the silver metal mask was the former King Grade expert, Stanley Grinton. A King Grade expert who only had physical strength would at least have the combat power of a Desolate Grade level 3 expert. Blocking a Desolate Grade level 2 wind blade was not a problem. As for the silver metal mask on the man's face, It was given to Gray by Francis when he left the Purple Moon Kingdom's imperial city. This was a special magic weapon. Although it did not have any attack power, its value was far above ordinary bronze magic weapons. This mask could conceal the aura on the body and prevent it from being exposed. It was practically tailor-made for Stanley Grinton. Not only could it conceal Stanley Grinton's face, but could also conceal his king-grade aura. Fighting me with a broken blade? Are you looking down on me? The green-robed elder's face was ashen. It was common knowledge that a broken magic weapon's power would be greatly reduced. Facing him with a broken magic weapon, what else could it be other than looking down on him? Stanley Grinton naturally did not have rich feelings for using a broken blade to show his contempt for his opponent. However, Stanley Grinton obviously could not explain himself. Good. Since you dare to make an enemy of the Nahum family, let me see how strong you are. The green-robed elder was so angry that he laughed. Woo-woo. A huge green tornado appeared, sweeping up a large amount of rocks and giant trees. It carried a terrifying gust of wind and was extremely powerful as it charged towards Stanley Grinton. This was a terrifying attack, and its power was clearly much stronger than the wind blade from before. If the wind blade was the elder's normal attack, then this green tornado was his trump card. Whoosh! In response, Stanley Grinton's approach was still simple and crude. He raised the broken blade in his hand and slashed down. Crack! The huge tornado was split into two halves by his blade. The raging wind stopped abruptly, and the earth, rocks, and trees that were swept up fell with a loud crash. During this process, Stanley Grinton moved. Whoosh! Like a bolt of lightning, Stanley Grinton pounced towards the green-robed elder. Whoosh! The green-robed elder retreated to dodge, but he was surprised to find that he, who had always been proud of his speed, was actually slower than Stanley Grinton. The distance between him and Stanley Grinton was rapidly closing. As far as he knew, the Crimson Kingdom's royal family's blood technique was the only thing that could surpass his speed within the same realm. However, it was clear that the other party did not cultivate this blood technique. This gave him a bad feeling. What he cultivated was not the Crimson Kingdom's blood technique, but he was faster than him. Did that not mean that the other party's strength was not limited to the second level of the Desolate level? However, before he could ask the question, Stanley Grinton was already in front of him. He gritted his teeth, and the sword in his hand shone with a green light and made a buzzing sound. He slashed at Stanley Grinton. At the same time, Stanley Grinton slashed with the broken blade in his hand. Clang! Puff! The green-robed elder's sword was knocked away by a huge force. The broken blade slashed across the green-robed elder's body. The green-robed elder immediately flew backward, blood splattering everywhere. He fell more than 100 meters away. Lord Baird is injured? The Nahum family, including the head of the family, Stanley Grinton, could not help but look pale. There was unconcealable shock on their faces. Lord Baird, who was at the second level of the King's stage, had been defeated. Moreover, he had been defeated after only 3 exchanges. No, to be precise, the other party had only attacked once. In the first 2 attacks, the other party had only blocked Lord Baird's attacks. If he could injure Lord Baird, who was at the second level of the Desolate level, with 1 attack, did that mean that this person's strength had reached the 3rd level of the Desolate level? You're at the 3rd level of the Desolate level. In the distance, the injured green-robed Elder Baird stood up awkwardly. He glanced at the wounds on his body, and his eyes were filled with fear. His words had confirmed the Nahum family speculation. The other party was indeed a 3rd level, Desolate level powerhouse. How is that possible? How could this guy know a 3rd level, Desolate level powerhouse and be willing to stand up for him? Warner Nahum's face was filled with shock and anger. After Gray's identity was exposed, he had naturally investigated Gray in detail. As far as he knew, Gray's original family was only a feudal aristocrat. It was impossible for them to have crossed paths with such a powerhouse. I've already said that we shouldn't continue to be enemies with Gray Fergus. Nathan Nahum's eyes were filled with fear. After returning from the Jewel Kingdom, he had already proposed not to be enemies with Grey Fergus. He felt that if they continued to be enemies with Grey Fergus, the Nahum family would regret it in the future. Unfortunately, whether it was his father, his elder brother, or the other elders of the family, none of them took his proposal seriously. Now, his worries had become a reality. Now, the other party had the strength to contend with the Nahum family. Whoosh! Stanley Grinton did not respond. Instead, he pounced on the green-robed elder. As a controlled object with the ability to control corpses, he had no other emotions other than a certain ability to carry out orders. Naturally, he would not stop to introduce himself to satisfy the curiosity of the green-robed elder and the others. He would only faithfully carry out Gray's orders. Whoosh! Under Gray's command, Stanley Glinton's body flashed like a bolt of lightning as he pounced on the green-clothed elder. Gray was not satisfied with the extent of the green-clothed elder's injuries. Seeing that Stanley Grinton was getting closer and closer to the green-robed elder at this moment. Boom! A terrible loud noise suddenly sounded. Stanley Grinton, who was pouncing forward, suddenly flew backward. His body seemed to have been hit by a train. Countless trees and rocks were smashed, and he flew hundreds of meters away. Along the way, an exaggerated gully that stretched hundreds of meters appeared. The gully was wide and deep. The nearby trees were crushed by an invisible edge, and a large area collapsed. The ground was full of crisscrossing marks, each of which was several meters deep. Chapter 463. The long ravine was wide and deep, extending for hundreds of meters like a dried-up river. At one end of the ravine, Baird Naim, the blue-clothed old man with an injury on his chest, was holding a short sword in his hand. The short sword was about half a meter long and was entirely blue. There were many golden rune patterns on its surface. Just now, Baird Naim had slashed with this short sword, sending Stanley Grinton flying and leaving behind this ravine that was hundreds of meters long. Asterisk kacha. Asterisk suddenly, a crisp sound came from the short sword in Baird Naim's hand. Then, cracks quickly appeared on the short sword in Baird Naim's hand. In the end, as if the entire sword had completed its mission, it completely shattered into powder and drifted away. Clearly, this was a forbidden weapon. This was a forbidden weapon sealed with the power of a king-level powerhouse's attack. The Nahum family hasn't been in such a sorry state for hundreds of years. You're very good. You actually forced my Nahum family to use a forbidden weapon. The blue-clothed old man looked coldly at Gray, his voice cold. His heart was dripping blood. As a family that had once produced a king-level powerhouse, the family naturally possessed forbidden weapons. However, they were extremely few in number, only a few. Moreover, every time one was used, there would be one less. There was no way to replenish them unless another king-level powerhouse appeared in the family. He had never imagined that the other party would be so difficult to deal with. He was actually able to invite a third-level, desolate-level powerhouse. In order to deal with the other party, he had no choice but to use a forbidden weapon. Grey Fergus, you caused my Nahum family to lose a forbidden weapon. Use the magic weapon you obtained from the ghost merchant as compensation. The Nahum family's patriarch, Adjanon Naim, said angrily. His heart was also dripping blood. Father, this is letting him off too easily. He cut off one of Uncle Lambert's arms. He must leave one of his arms behind. Warner Nahum said coldly. After returning to the Nahum family from the Jewel Kingdom, he had already suggested to the family that they assassinate Gray. The higher-ups of the family had also been persuaded, but he did not expect that Gray would take the initiative to come to them before they could carry out the plan. As for letting the Clover Chamber of Commerce suppress the Fergus family, it was just a matter of convenience. He didn't take it seriously at all. He also didn't think that Gray would take the initiative to go to the Nahum family to ask for an explanation. Yes, Master Warner is right. We can't let him go just like that. We must cut off one of his arms to avenge Lambert. He provoked us first. Even if we report this to the royal family, we must occupy him. An elder of the Naim clan said loudly, hand over the magical weapon, and then cut off one of your arms. Otherwise, you won't be able to walk out of Neum today. Another elder of the Naim clan clamored. Seems like you got me. Looking at the Nahum family who were already discussing compensation, Gray's face bloomed with a mocking smile. He looked at this group of people as if he was looking at a clown. Gray Fergus, I admit that the Nahum family underestimated you before. You actually have a third-level desolate gray backer behind you. However, the background of a duke's family is not something you can imagine. You only have one path now, and that is to cut off one of your arms and hand over that magical weapon. The head of the Nahum family, Adjananim, looked coldly at Gray and said, after being hit by a forbidden weapon, even if he is a third-level desolate grade, he will definitely be heavily injured. He no longer has the strength to fight. You have no choice. The green-clothed elder, Baird Naim, said confidently. If he didn't know that this matter had already attracted the attention of the royal family, what he wanted to do was not just to make the other party compensate and cut off one of his arms, but to directly kill the other party here. No longer has the strength to fight. The mocking expression on Gray's face became even more obvious. Pa, pa, pa. At the end of the several hundred-meter-long ravine, a figure stood up. His clothes were almost completely tattered, and his exposed skin was filled with a silvery white color. His entire person seemed to have been poured with silver. He rushed over at an extremely fast speed, and his footsteps were steady as if he had not been injured at all. How can this be? How can he only suffer such a minor injury after being hit by a forbidden weapon? Some people in the Nahum family cried out in alarm, while others remained silent, but their faces turned pale. The people present were not ordinary people, and their eyesight was naturally excellent. Even though they were several hundred meters away, they could still clearly see the situation on Stanley Grinton's body. At this moment, although the other party's clothes were tattered, there were no signs of serious injuries. The only wound on his body was on his chest, but it was obvious that it was not a serious injury. Now, do you still think you can take me down? Gray's gaze swept across the Nahum family, and a cold smile appeared on his face. A family that had once produced a king-level expert would definitely have a forbidden weapon in their hands, so Gray had been on guard from the very beginning. When he saw the azure-clothed elder, Baird Naim, take out an azure-colored longsword covered in runes, he immediately made the decision to use his metallization ability on Stanley Grinton. As a king-level expert in his previous life, Stanley Grinton's own defense was already extremely terrifying. After metallization, his defense had been greatly enhanced, and his defense immediately jumped to the level of a king-level expert who specialized in defense. How could a forbidden weapon be able to seriously injure such a level of defense? Leaving a wound on his body was already the limit. After all, strictly speaking, the power of a forbidden weapon was still slightly inferior to the power of a true king-level expert. He definitely has a defensive silver-grade magic weapon on him. You gave that magic weapon to him? Baird Naim asked in a deep voice. He was well aware of the power of a forbidden weapon. Even a third-level desolate-grade expert would not be able to suffer such a minor injury from a forbidden weapon. The only explanation was that the other party had a silver-grade magic weapon in his hand, and he had relied on the defense of this magic weapon to block the forbidden weapon's attack. Swish! At this moment, Stanley Grinton had already quickly passed by Gray and charged straight at the azure-clothed elder, Baird Naim. Baird Naim's expression changed, and he frantically dodged, but it was as if he had been locked on, and he could not dodge at all. Pooh! With a slash of the blade, another serious wound appeared on the azure-clothed elder's body, and he flew backward. Stanley Grinton caught up and slashed down with his blade again. Pooh! Another serious wound appeared on the azure-clothed elder's body, and he fell heavily to the ground, creating a crater more than 10 meters in diameter. He was unable to get up for a long time. Stanley Grinton walked up, holding the blade in his right hand and grabbing the elder's neck with his left hand. He lifted the elder up like he was grabbing a chick and walked toward Gray. Stop! What are you doing? Let go of Lord Baird. The other members of the Naim family were shocked and furious. Many of them used their blood beast ability, roaring as they pounced towards Stanley Grinton. Bang, bang. Gray attacked, and the black mist turned into huge black whips one after another, lashing out at the people who had pounced. These people immediately flew backward at a speed faster than when they had charged out, falling to the ground. The flesh on their bodies where they had been lashed disappeared, and blood flowed out. Seeing the miserable state of their companions, the other members of the Nahum family, who had been charging forward in anger, suddenly stopped in their tracks. They could neither charge forward nor retreat. "Stop! Let go of Lord Baird." The head of the Nahum family, Adnan, exuded a strong sense of majesty as he said with a livid face. Knowing that Gray had attacked them, the Nahum family rubbed their palms together. Not only did they invite the clan elder, who had the strength of a second-grade desolate level who had not fought for a long time, but they even brought along their forbidden weapon. They were fully prepared. However, even under such circumstances, they were still defeated. This was something that he and everyone in the Nahum family had not expected. "Do I have to let go just because you told me to? Are you used to giving orders? Even now, you're still using a commanding tone?" Gray coldly glanced at him, then looked at the other members of the Nahum family, and finally, his gaze fell on Warner Nahum. At this moment, Warner Nahum's eyes were spitting fire, but his face showed fear. He shrank into the crowd, and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Gray sneered at Warner Nahum, then pounced over. The latter knew that Gray was coming for him, so he retreated in fear. Bang, bang, bang. Under the black mist whips, everyone who attacked Gray was severely injured and sent flying backward. Gray caught up with Warner Nahum, and a black mist whips lashed out at him, causing him to be severely injured. He walked over and looked coldly at the severely injured man on the ground. Just now, he heard very clearly that the first person to propose to cut off his arm was Warner Nahum. Obviously, this person's hatred for him was definitely one of the most powerful people in the Nahum family. Gray Fergus, seriously injured, Warner Nahum gritted his teeth when he saw Gray looking down at him from above. "Nice look in your eyes. Do you hate me that much?" Gray lifted his foot and stepped on one of the man's hands. Suddenly, the sound of bones breaking was heard, followed by a scream like a pig being slaughtered. "Gray Fergus, what are you trying to do? If you kill the two of them, the royal family will never let you go." Seeing his son screaming under Gray's foot, the head of the Nahum family, Adnan Nahum, clenched his fist, his eyes filled with anger, and asked angrily, "Now you only dare to use the royal family to threaten me? Where is the glory and dignity of your Nahum family?" Gray curled his lips, moved his foot forward again, and then stomped down hard. The sound of a pig being slaughtered continued to ring out. "What do you want?" Holding back his anger, the head of the Nahum family, Adnan Nahum, asked. The family's powerhouse and his own son had fallen into the hands of the other party. "Because of your Nahum family suppression, my Fergus family lost a total of 10 million gold coins. What do you think we should do?" Gray looked coldly at the head of the Nahum family, Adnan Nahum. Chapter 464. 10 million? Why don't you just rob us? Hearing Gray's words, a Nahum family elder who had just recovered from his injuries spat out a mouthful of blood and anger. The entire wealth of the Fergus family was not even worth 10 million gold coins. The other party had only lost some herbs, yet he wanted to ask for 10 million gold coins in compensation. This was no different from robbery. "I'm robbing right now." Gray looked at him as if he was an idiot. The Nahum family elder was so angry that he spat out another mouthful of blood and fainted. 10 million gold coins is too much. Your Fergus family's losses can't possibly be that much. The head of the Nahum family, Adnan Nahum, took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. "You've made a mistake. I'm not discussing this with you." Gray looked coldly at the head of the Nahum family, Adnan Nahum, and exerted more force with his foot, causing Warner Nahum to cry out miserably again. "If you give me 10 million gold coins in compensation, I'll drop this matter. If you don't, then I'll have to make a trip to the Nahum family's residence." Gray Fergus, you're too overbearing. One of the desolate blood warriors who had fought with Gray earlier said angrily. "In terms of overbearingness, how can I compare to your Nahum family? Taking by force, coercing, and bribing. Compared to you, I'm ashamed of my inferiority." Gray glanced at the desolate blood warrior, and said, "Family head, you can't agree to it. At worst, we'll just fight it out with him. Yes, fight it out with him. I don't believe he'll dare to kill us." Some of the Nahum family members hooted. For hundreds of years, the Nahum family had never been so aggrieved. Someone had actually come knocking on their door and forced to pay compensation. This made them, who had always been proud of the Nahum family, unable to accept it. Pung, pung, pung. What welcomed them were a couple of black mist whips. Under the attack of the black mist whips, they were severely injured and sent flying backwards without being able to resist at all. Gray was more than happy to tear apart the pride and arrogance of these people. Stop. The Nahum family is willing to pay compensation. The Nahum family gnashed their teeth as they looked at Baird Naim, who was held in Stanley Grinton's hands without any ability to resist, and then looked at Warner Nahum, who was screaming miserably at Gray's feet. 10 million gold coins was not a small sum for the Nahum family. Of course, the main reason was the humiliation. The Nahum family had been a duke family for hundreds of years, but when had they ever suffered such humiliation? Damn it, hearing that the head of the Nahum family, Ajanon Naim, had agreed to compensate, the faces of many Nahum family members turned ashen. Their fingernails dug into their flesh as a deep sense of humiliation surfaced in their hearts. Some of the older generation were both ashamed and angry, so angry that they vomited blood. They glared at Gray as if they wanted to kill someone. Get it as soon as possible. If you play any tricks, you know the consequences. Gray's expression did not change in the slightest in the face of the hateful gazes. Now that they knew about humiliation and anger, did they know about the humiliation and anger of the families that had been forcefully seized by the head of the Naim family, the families that had been maliciously suppressed by the Nahum family, and the families that had been exterminated because of the Nahum family? Of course, Gray had no intention of seeking justice for the families that had been oppressed by the Nahum family. After all, those families had nothing to do with him. The vegetation on the ground was forcibly cut off, and a pile of glittering purple-black magic coins was piled up there. There were no less than 100,000 magic coins, making it look like a small purple-black mountain. Gray walked over, and with a touch of his purple ring, the pile of magic coins was collected into the purple ring. I've already given you the compensation you wanted. Release Lord Baird and Warner. The head of the Nahum family, Ajanon Naim, said with a cold face. No problem. Gray gave a slight signal, and Stanley Grinton threw Baird Naim out. He was not a member of the Nahum family and disdained to go back on his word. Then he looked at Warner Nahum. Since you want to cripple my arms so much, why don't you have a taste of it too? No. The head of the Nahum family, Ajanon Naim, was shocked and angry. He tried to stop him, but it was too late, and even if he could not stop him. Baird Naim, who was at the second level of the desolation level, was seriously injured. Now, there was no one in the Nahum family who could stop Gray. A black mist appeared and wrapped Warner Nahum's right arm. In just an instant, Warner Nahum's right arm was severed at the base and completely dissipated. Naturally, there was nothing much to say to someone who wanted to sever his arm. Doing what the other party wanted to do to him was the best punishment for the other party. Ah, my arm. Covering his severed arm, Warner Nahum was in so much pain that he broke out in cold sweat and screamed in pain. You actually crippled his arm. The arm of the most talented member of the Nahum family, his own son, had been chopped off. The head of the Nahum family, Ajanon Nahum, was both shocked and furious. He wanted to go all out against Gray, but he clenched his fists and relaxed them. He knew very well that the current Nahum family was definitely not a match for Gray. Glancing at the other party and seeing that he had no intention of making a move, Gray ignored him and turned to leave with Stanley Grinton. Although he wanted to eliminate the root of the problem and kill all the people who had the deepest enmity with the Nahum family, with the royal family around, such a thing was obviously not allowed, unless he wanted to betray the Purple Moon Kingdom. In the end, he was still not strong enough. If he had the strength of a king warrior now, even if he killed a few people, the royal family would turn a blind eye to it. Although he had great potential now, potential was only potential, not strength. His strength had not reached that level. So naturally, He could not have too many privileges to make the royal family make an exception. After Gray left, only the members of the Naeem clan who were all injured and had sullen and angry expressions remained on their faces. Damn it. If Lord Barnet hadn't returned for 10 years, he wouldn't have been so rampant. The green-clothed elder, Agenon Naeem, touched the ground with his sword, supporting his heavily injured body. His eyes were full of unwillingness. As a family that had once produced a king-level powerhouse, the Nehem family did not only have this little strength. In fact, the Nehem family had a third-level, desolate-level powerhouse. However, this third-level, desolate-level powerhouse had gone out to search for an opportunity to break through and had not returned for 10 years. He hasn't returned for so long. Could Lord Barnet have already? A Nehem family elder said with a worried expression. Barnet Naeem was not young anymore. He had gone out to find an opportunity for one last gamble. If he succeeded, he would have a long lifespan of 300 years. If he failed, he would naturally be a skeleton. Now that he had not returned for 10 years, he could not help but worry that Barnet Naeem might have died somewhere. No, Lord Barnet will definitely return. The Nehem family's patriarch, Agenon Naeem, said resolutely. Although he also felt that the chances were slim, the Nehem family had just suffered a great calamity. They needed this kind of hope to cheer everyone up. The patriarch is right. Lord Barnet is definitely not dead. Lord Barnet will definitely return. The hesitation in the eyes of many Nehem family members lessened, and hope bloomed in their eyes. It's a little unusually smooth. After walking to a deserted area, Gray put Stanley Grinton into the purple ring. Things had gone so smoothly that it had exceeded his expectations. The large Duke Naeem's family had actually been wiped out without much hindrance. This was something he had not expected before coming. He had estimated that the Nehem family should have a third-grade desolation warrior, but in fact, he had not been able to meet one. The strongest was only a second-grade desolation warrior. In front of Stanley Grinton, they had been defeated without any resistance. Only that forbidden weapon had been a little hindrance, but only a little. After Stanley Grinton had withstood it with his powerful defense, he had been easily defeated. And I didn't even see a silver-grade magic weapon. What made Gray feel a little strange was that although the Nehem family had taken out a forbidden weapon, they had not been able to take out a silver-grade magic weapon. According to common sense, the Nehem family should have a silver-grade magic weapon in their hands. Originally, he had wanted to snatch their silver-grade magic weapon, but unfortunately, he had not seen it. Forget it. It's best if there isn't one. So what if there is a third-grade desolation warrior? Gray shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Even if the Nehem family had a third-grade desolation warrior hidden, he had no fear. Stanley Grinton's strength was definitely at the third-grade desolation warrior. In addition to his terrifying defense after metallization, Gray was sure that no third-grade desolation warrior would be a match for him, even if they had a silver-grade magic weapon. Although a silver-grade magic weapon was powerful and could reach the regent level, it consumed a lot of blood force. Even a third-grade desolation warrior would not be able to fight for long with it. Although Stanley Grinton's combat strength was slightly weaker, his powerful defense was enough to make up for the difference. He could rely on his powerful body to exhaust his opponent's blood force. As for the possibility of Stanley Grinton becoming a regent warrior, Gray did not even think about it. In the entire Purple Moon Kingdom, there were less than 10 regent warriors, and most of them were concentrated in the royal family. In the forces outside the royal family, the probability of producing a regent warrior was pitifully low, even for the families of the three dukes. This was evident from the fact that the Addison family and the Nehem family had not produced a regent warrior for more than 200 years. In the past 200 years, did the two families not produce a third-grade desolation warrior? There must have been at least a few of them, but they all failed. There was an invisible gap between third-grade desolation warriors and regent warriors, and it blocked too many third-grade desolation warriors. Chapter 465. Have you heard? In the conflict between the Fergus family and the Nehem family, Gray Fergus was able to escape unscathed, while the Nehem family suffered a great loss. All of them were heavily injured. I heard that they even compensated a total of 10 million gold coins. The various noble and merchant families of the Purple Moon Kingdom had long been paying attention to the conflict between Gray and the Nahum family. When they heard that Gray was able to escape unscathed while the Nahum family was not only injured, but also compensated a total of 10 million gold coins, they couldn't help but be shocked. The Nahum family, one of the three Duke families, had a terrifying foundation. They had once produced a king-level expert, yet they were defeated. This was something they had never expected. Only a few families knew that Gray had the terrifying trump card of Stanley Grinton in his hands. Only then did they expect this. After the three dukes, I'm afraid there will be an additional earl. We should call them 3 dukes and 1 earl. Some family side. The 3 dukes represented the 3 strongest forces within the Purple Moon Kingdom. The other forces, even the Marquis family, paled in comparison to them. Now, Gray was able to escape unscathed from the conflict with the Nahum family, and even force the Nahum family to compensate. This already showed that his Earl Fergus family had the power to rival the Duke family. If I had known that the Fergus family had such potential, I would have tried to befriend them. Knowing the conflict between the Fergus family and the Nahum family, many families maintained a wait-and-see attitude when it came to befriending the Fergus family. They didn't want to become enemies, but they didn't want to get close either. Now, they couldn't help but feel some regret. If they had tried their best to befriend the Fergus family back then, they might have already established a close relationship with the Fergus family. It's not too late now. I heard that the Fergus family was suppressed by the Nahum family, and their medicinal herbs are not selling well. This is a good opportunity. Some families' eyes lit up, and they hurriedly sent people to Fergus's territory. At this moment, a pair of siblings who had been staying in Fergus City for a few days were on their way to Fergus Castle in a carriage with carefully selected gifts. In the carriage, Quentin Leander's face was full of astonishment. He actually defeated the Nahum family and even made Leona's family compensate him. A newly promoted earl had actually swept away the Duke's family and even made the Duke's family pay compensation. This was simply inconceivable to him. If the news had not been repeatedly confirmed, he would have thought it was a rumor. His sister, Leander's beautiful face remained calm. Her body exuded a capable aura, but her heart was also full of shock. Back then, he had only rushed to Fergus City because he felt that it was worth a try. However, he did not expect that the other party would actually defeat the Nahum family by himself and make the Nahum family pay compensation. Father, it's already the harvest season for the herbs. Even if we leave them in the field and don't harvest them, there will be a large amount of damage every day. In the study of Fergus Castle, Bernal looked worried. Still haven't contacted a merchant guild that's willing to buy them? Earl Fergus frowned. No. Ever since we were suppressed by Clover Merchant Guild, no other merchant guild is willing to buy our herbs. Obviously, they're afraid of the Nahum family behind Clover Merchant Guild. Bernal smiled bitterly and shook his head. Nahum family? I wonder about Gray's side. Earl Fergus's frown deepened. Deep worry grew in his heart. Father, it'll be fine. Gray is not a reckless person, Bernal said as if he was comforting Count Fergus, but also as if he was comforting himself. Lord Earl, young Master Bernal, the Dawn Merchant Guild, is here to visit. At this moment, a servant knocked on the door and reported. Dawn Merchant Guild? Why is the Dawn Merchant Guild here? Earl Fergus and Bernal were both puzzled. They had heard of the Dawn Merchant Guild, but had never come into contact with them. They did not understand why they would come to visit. The two of them came to the living room and saw the siblings, Elle and Quentin Leandra. What? The Dawn Merchant Guild is willing to buy the Fergus family's herbs at market price? After talking for a while, Earl Fergus and Bernal felt as though they had been hit by a pleasant surprise. They did not expect the Dawn Merchant Guild to not only be willing to buy the herbs that the Fergus family could not sell, but also not suppress the price at all. They would buy them at the current market price. Amidst the surreal feeling, the two of them signed the agreement with the Dawn Merchant Guild and sent them away. However, their surprise did not stop there. What? The Purple Cuckoo Merchant Guild is here to visit? Didn't they already reject the Fergus family? What's the meaning of this visit? After that, the two of them were shocked to find that the presidents of the Dawn Merchant Guild, who had rejected them, came to visit them one after another with smiles on their faces. They politely expressed their willingness to buy the Fergus family's herbs. When they found out that the Fergus family had already signed the agreement with the Dawn Merchant Guild, their faces were filled with regret. It was as though the Fergus family's herbs had suddenly become a precious magic potion. Something's not right. What's going on with these Dawn Merchant Guild? Why did their attitudes change so drastically? Earl Fergus and Bernal looked at each other. It was obvious that something had happened that they did not know about. Otherwise, the attitude of these Dawn Merchant Guild would not have changed so drastically. At this moment, a messenger bird flew into Fergus Castle with a letter. After reading the contents of the letter, the two of them finally understood. At the same time, they could not help but be shocked. Gray actually went to the Nahum family and forced the Nahum family to pay 10 million gold coins. What kind of family was the Nahum family? They were a duke family that had produced a king realm fighter and had at least a few Battle of the Wilds in their family. And yet, such a family had been defeated by Gray and forced to pay compensation. How strong did he have to be able to do this? How strong was Gray now? Several months later, in the training grounds of Fergus Castle, two people were fighting in the training grounds. One of them was a black-haired young man. He was dressed in a white noble's robe. His black hair flowed in the wind, and his facial features were distinct. He had a pair of blue eyes that were as deep as the sky. The other person was a black-haired girl. Her hair was very long, reaching her waist. It was tied up with a pink hairband. She was dressed in blue female battle attire, revealing her beautiful figure. Her skin was fair, and her eyes were serious and focused. One of them was attacking and the other defending. The black-haired girl wielded a long sword and constantly attacked the black-haired man from various angles. The black-haired man casually flicked and flicked, easily dispersing the black-haired girl's attacks. It was clear that his fighting skills were far superior to the black-haired girl's. These two were Gray and Sarah. Rest for a while. Gray glanced at Sarah's sweaty forehead and forced Sarah back with a slash of his sword. The latter immediately stopped when she heard this. Without a care for her image, she propped herself up with her sword and gasped for breath. It was clear that she was truly exhausted. Gray had not left the castle in the past few months. Aside from cultivating, he had been sparring with Sarah to strengthen her fighting skills. The importance of fighting skills in battle went without saying. Although Gray did not intend to let Sarah enter the battlefield, he did not want her to be unable to use her strength. Moreover, Sarah's cultivation talent was not bad, and with sufficient cultivation resources, she had already become a ferocious warrior. She should not waste her strength. Young Master Gray. Barbara stepped forward and gently handed Gray and Sarah a wet towel. "Leave this to the servants." Gray took the towel and said, "In any case, I have nothing better to do. It's very interesting to watch the two of you fight." Barbara shook her head and smiled. She was also dressed in female battle attire. The most suitable age for a bloodline implant was 15. Although he was already past this age, it did not mean that it could not be implanted. Thus, Gray had purchased blood essence and implanted a bloodline in him. He cultivated the blood art of the Thunder Draconic Beast sequence, but because he was already past the optimal age, his talent was not very good. Even with sufficient resources, his cultivation speed was not very fast. I could take it for the fourth time. In the afternoon, in an open space in the forest, Gray took out a small yellow metal bottle the size of a wine cup. The yellow metal bottle contained a flame-like golden medicinal liquid. A rich medicinal fragrance wafted out from the opening of the bottle. It was not advisable to take medicine that could increase one's strength too frequently. There was a process for the body to absorb the medicine. Taking it too frequently could easily lead to long-term accumulation of the medicine and damage the body. Although Gray felt that his body was extremely special and had an extremely strong ability to absorb medicine and the effective ingredients in the blood of blood fiends, for safety reasons, he did not take it continuously. Instead, he took it once a month. Gulp. After drinking it in one gulp, Gray immediately felt his entire body become extremely limp and numb. It was as if he had been electrocuted. Wave after wave of limp and numb feeling assaulted his mind. In this limp and numb state, he could clearly feel that his body was continuously strengthening. It was this rapid strengthening of his body that caused the limp and numb feeling in his body. After a full half an hour, the limp and numb feeling gradually faded. Although there were still remnants, it was no longer as strong as before. Gray began to practice the blood technique, using it to increase the absorption of the medicine's effective ingredients. A giant beast covered in blue scales appeared in the forest not far from the castle. It had a lizard-like appearance and a huge, blade-like horn. In the forest, all kinds of birds and beasts suddenly trembled. Although it was not a real thunder dragon beast, it more or less carried the aura of a thunder dragon beast. This kind of aura was extremely terrifying to these birds and beasts in the forest who had not even reached the level of a low-level blood warrior. Because practicing the thunder dragon beast blood technique would cause too much of a commotion, even the training room could not block it. Therefore, Gray chose to practice in the forest around the castle. The training proceeded. The first round of training was completed. The second round of training was completed. The first training method of the third round of training was completed. The second training method of the third round of training was completed. When the second training method of the third round of training was completed, the thunder dragon beast shadow that enveloped Gray's surroundings began to fester. His physical strength had reached its current limit, and the training was completely over. The second training method of the third round is completely completed. It's time to take the Diamond King Beast blood. The corners of Gray's mouth curled into a smile. He had been waiting for this day for a few months. Chapter 466. Let's do it here. Taking out the bathtub, Gray used his ice ability to create ice and his fire ability to melt the ice into water of a suitable temperature. Taking off his clothes, Gray stepped into the bathtub. Gray took out a portion of the Diamond King Beast blood that he had prepared beforehand and drank it in one gulp. Whoosh! The next moment, an extremely itchy feeling spread. It was as if thousands of ants were crawling all over Gray's body. Gray felt itchy all over his body. Knowing that this was a necessary process, Gray did not reach out to grab it. Instead, he tried his best to endure it. According to past experience, the body would react differently after consuming the blood of a desolate level or higher blood beast. When Gray consumed the blood of a desolate level blood beast, Ice Soul Beast, he felt as if his body had fallen into an ice cellar. His entire body became extremely cold. The cold air exuding from his body even turned the water in the bathtub into ice. When he consumed the blood of a thunder dragon, his entire body was covered in purple electric light. The purple electric light formed a lightning cocoon around his body. When he consumed the blood of a desolate level fire-type blood beast, his entire body was covered in purple flames. It was as if his entire body was burning. Now, the effect of consuming the Diamond King Beast blood was clearly the itching that spread all over his body. Oomph! The itching continued and became more intense as time passed. Gray gritted his teeth and endured. His lips had already been bitten by accident. His mouth was filled with the taste of iron, but he did not feel any pain. He just tried his best to endure the itching that was getting more and more intense. Slowly, his skin began to become uneven and full of wrinkles. In the end, cracks began to appear one after another. No blood flowed out from these cracks. Instead, the skin all over his body fell off piece by piece. It was as if the layer of skin that fell off was just a mask applied to his body. The real skin underneath was the layer of skin that had fallen off. When a layer of skin had fallen off, the itching on Gray's body gradually subsided. Only then did the transformation of his body gradually come to an end. He opened his eyes and saw that his skin was so fair that it was comparable to a woman's. The healthy color of his skin that had been exposed to the sun and wind had disappeared without a trace. The bathwater was filled with pieces of dead skin, covering the entire bathtub. After changing a basin of water and washing his body, Gray changed into a tight-fitting blue noble suit. His slender figure appeared even more tall and straight under the contrast of his noble attire. Coupled with his long, moist black hair. A unique temperament emanated from his body. I wonder to what extent it can be improved. Clenching his fist, Gray felt an even stronger force in his hand than before and punched out. Boom! A violent explosion sounded in the air. A tree not far away seemed to have been attacked by an invisible force from his punch. It trembled violently, and a large number of leaves fell. Although the destructive power was extremely weak and far from being able to hurt people from a distance, there was no doubt that the strength of his punch was close to that. When he became stronger, it would not be impossible for him to hurt people from a distance. Air also had mass. As long as he exerted enough force, hurting people from a distance was not a fantasy. Whoosh! Then he bent his body slightly, like an arrow drawn to its bow. The next moment, he suddenly shot out like an arrow. In an instant, he had left his original position and appeared dozens of meters away. The fast movement brought about a strong gust of wind, causing the surrounding leaves to flutter and spin as they fell. My strength and speed should have reached the first level of the desolated level. According to Gray's judgment, his strength and speed should have reached the first level of the desolated level. It was not the first time that he had fought with someone at the first level of the desolated level. He was very familiar with the strength and speed of this level, so he could easily determine that his current strength and speed had reached this level. I finally made up for my weakness in strength and speed. Gray nodded his head in satisfaction. A battle was not only a competition of the strength of the Blood Fiends, but also of speed, strength, defense, combat skills, and many other aspects. When one was relatively weak in a certain aspect, it was easy to be targeted by the opponent and become the cause of defeat. For a long time, speed and strength had been Gray's weakness. It was not the first time that he had been targeted by the opponent. For example, during the Tri-Nation Exchange, and the last time when he fought with the two desolate blood warriors from the Nam family, he had been targeted by the opponent. Fortunately, his blood fiends were powerful enough to reach the second level of the desolated level. Moreover, he had the means to attack in a range, so he made up for his weakness in strength and speed and defeated the opponent. However, there was no doubt that his weakness in strength and speed had dragged down his overall combat strength. Without the drag of his strength and speed, he would have become stronger. Now that his strength and speed had reached the first level of the desolated level, his overall combat strength would undoubtedly become stronger, and it would be harder for him to be targeted by the opponent. Next is defense. Gray's eyes flashed with anticipation. The increase in strength and speed naturally made him extremely happy. However, what he looked forward to the most was the increase in defense. Although the increase in strength and speed could increase his overall strength, it was obviously not enough for him to challenge the second level of the desolated level. However, the increase in defense was different. Before he had consumed the Diamond King Beast's blood, he already had a strong defense that was difficult for the first level of the desolated level to damage. Now that he had consumed the Diamond King Beast's blood, his defense would definitely increase greatly. If it could reach the second level of the desolated level, it would be difficult for him to damage the second level of the desolated level. Coupled with the Blood Fiend's ability that was barely at the second level of the desolated level, it would not be impossible for him to have the strength to contend with the second level of the desolated level Blood Warriors. Of course, everything depended on how much the current strongest defense could be improved. Whoosh! Using the purple ring, Stanley Grinton appeared and controlled its destructive power to be at the first level of the desolated level. Then it slashed at his metallized body. Clang! The sound of metal colliding rang out. Gray was sent flying backward. He did not know how many trees and rocks he had smashed before he came to a stop. He stood up and looked at the place where Stanley Grinton had slashed at him. Although there was a huge hole in the clothes he had just changed into, there was not a single wound on his excessively white skin. Obviously, his defense had increased again. It was so strong that it was difficult for the first level of the desolated level to damage him. Clang! He had Stanley Grinton control its power to the second level of the desolated level. With another slash, Gray was sent flying again. This time, he was no longer unscathed. A bloody wound appeared where he had been slashed. Dark red blood seeped out, but it was not deep. It was only a minor injury. The second level of the desolated level is difficult to damage. Gray nodded with satisfaction. As expected, even the second level of the desolated level would not be able to damage him with his current defense. With such a defense and the 3 mixed abilities that were barely at the second level of the desolated level, he was confident that he could contend against the second level of the desolated level. The endless ice field referred to the continental area outside of the 4 great kingdoms. It was covered in ice and snow all year round, and the deeper one went, the lower the temperature. It was rumored that in the depths of the endless ice field, there were terrifying blood fiends that surpassed the king level and reached the magic light level. Even one of these blood fiends was enough to destroy any of the 4 great kingdoms. Therefore, the 4 great kingdoms had always been wary of the endless ice field. Fortunately, in the past 1,000 years, although there had been the occasional beast tide in the endless ice plains, and there had even been the appearance of king-level blood fiends, there had never been a magic light-level blood fiend. Otherwise, it would be hard to say whether the 4 great kingdoms would still exist. One day, in the depths of the endless ice field, boom! Suddenly, an aura spread out from the depths of the endless ice field. It was like an invisible dark cloud that covered hundreds of miles in the depths of the endless ice field. It emitted a terrifying aura that was as deep as the abyss. All the creatures fled in panic, as if it was the end of the world. Bang! A small mountain of snow collapsed, and a giant beast covered in white fur crawled out from the snow. Its body was more than 10 meters long. Its body was like a bear's, but its head was as round as a tiger's. This was a king-level blood fiend. It was a powerful blood fiend that stood at the top of the food chain. However, at this moment, its eyes were filled with fear. It moved its huge body and fled out of the endless ice field. Poof! A giant blood fiend covered in gray fur suddenly opened its 4 eyes. It was more than 10 meters long and looked like a wolf. However, it had 2 heads and a total of 4 eyes. It was also a king-level blood fiend. However, at this moment, its 4 eyes were filled with fear. With a leap, its strong body was already more than 100 meters away. Because it was too frightened, it did not have time to avoid obstacles. It crashed into a snowy mountain, causing it to collapse. At the same time, in the depths of the endless ice field, one king beast after another was awakened. They all fled out of the endless ice field in fear. As one king beast after another fled out of the endless ice field, a large number of blood fiends ran wildly. A terrifying beast tide that was rarely seen in 100 years was formed. Chapter 467. Frost City, one of the border cities of the Crimson Kingdom near the Ice Plains, was a city with a population of 30,000. On the city walls, the soldiers stretched lazily and leaned against the railings, looking outside the city walls casually. Since the establishment of the kingdom, this city had never been attacked by enemies. Although it was a border city, the soldiers were more or less undisciplined. "What did you do last night? Why do you look so listless?" A beady-eyed soldier looked at his companion and asked curiously. "I went to the shop in the east of the city last night. There were a few girls in the shop. That skin, that touch." His companion, a big-nosed soldier, chuckled and revealed a meaningful smile. "They're new girls? Why didn't you say so earlier? Let's go together after a shift." The beady-eyed soldier's heart was burning with passion. He could not wait for his shift to start immediately so that he could go to the shop in the east of the city and take care of their business. Dong, dong, dong. All of a sudden, a heavy drumming sound rang out, accompanied by a slight tremor on the ground. "What's going on?" The beady-eyed soldier and the big-nosed soldier were puzzled as they looked outside the city walls. They saw an extremely wide, dark cloud rapidly approaching from the distant horizon. Upon closer inspection, they realized that it was not a dark cloud, but a herd of wild beasts and blood fiends. There were so many of them that one couldn't see the end of them. Among them, one could clearly see huge blood fiends. "Beast tide! It's a beast tide!" quickly closed the city gates. The 2 of them broke out in cold sweat and shouted in horror. Clang, clang, clang. The city gates were closed, and the alarm rang. The urgent sound of the bell spread throughout the city. What's going on? Why is the ground shaking? The residents of the city walked out of their houses with puzzled expressions. Then, an apocalyptic scene appeared before them. The tall city walls collapsed, and a large number of wild beasts and mixed-blood fiends rushed into the city. Among them, there was no lack of terrifying blood fiends that were several meters tall. They ran amok, knocking down houses and trampling over people. There were screams everywhere, and blood and flesh splattered everywhere. In a short while, the city had become a ghost town. The entire city was flattened, and the ground was covered in blood and flesh. Some belonged to the wild beasts, and some belonged to the residents of the city. At the same time, the same thing was happening in the other cities at the border of the Crimson Kingdom. The terrifying beast tide continued to push forward. Everywhere it passed, there was no life left. It was a stretch of ruins. It was only when the Crimson Kingdom's royal family received the news and sent out king-level experts that the beast tide was finally stopped. However, the number of people who died in this beast tide had already reached millions. For the Scarlet Kingdom, today was destined to be a disaster that would be recorded in history. The news of the Crimson Kingdom encountering a monster horde that was hard to come by in hundreds of years quickly spread throughout the entire Crimson Kingdom, spreading to the Gem Kingdom, Purple Moon Kingdom, and the Flame Kingdom. Everyone who received the news couldn't help but be shocked and astonished. They were astonished by the scale of the beast tide and the number of casualties. A rare beast tide happened in the Crimson Kingdom, and millions of people died. After receiving the news, Gray was silent for a long time. There was no schadenfreude on his face, only shock. During the Three Kingdoms exchange, he didn't get along well with the Crimson Kingdom. Not only was he targeted by the nobles of the Crimson Kingdom, but in the end, because he was suspected of cultivating a hybrid blood technique, the king-level expert of the Crimson Kingdom had attacked him. Even so, when Gray heard the news, his first reaction was not joy, but extreme depression. Millions of people had died, just like that. How tragic was this? The corpses were enough to pile up in several mountains, and the blood was enough to gather into a lake. Millions of people, millions of once fresh lives disappeared just like that. Among them, there must be young girls in the most brilliant age of their lives. There were bound to be ignorant children who were curious about the future. There must be men and women who were in love. However, with a beast tide, everything dissipated. This was a disaster that would be recorded in history. A beast tide can't happen for no reason. There must be some unforeseen event in the depths of the ice plains that caused the beast tide to happen. What kind of unforeseen event is it? Gray held his chin with one hand, and his eyes showed that he was thinking. More than 100 years ago, the Purple Moon Kingdom also encountered a beast tide from the endless ice plains. However, that beast tide was far less intense than the one in the Crimson Kingdom, and only about 100,000 people died in that beast tide. The Purple Moon Kingdom sent experts to investigate the cause of the beast tide and found that it was the appearance of a ruin from the Empire era. The beast tide was caused by the appearance of the ruin. It was said that after the Purple Moon Kingdom explored this ruin, their harvest was extremely great. There was more than one silver-level magic weapon, and there were also many magic potions that still had their medicinal effects. More than 300 years ago, the Jewel Kingdom also encountered a beast tide from the endless ice plains, and hundreds of thousands of people died. After investigation, it was found that the beast tide was caused by the appearance of a magic light level powerhouse's tomb during the Empire era. In the magic light level powerhouse's tomb, the Jewel Kingdom obtained 3 bottles of extremely precious magic potions. It was said that each bottle of magic potion was enough to create a king-level powerhouse. Is it the Empire era's ruin or the Tomb of the King? With such a huge commotion this time, I'm afraid the scale must be unprecedentedly strong. Gray was tempted to explore the endless ice plains. To cause such a terrifying beast tide, the commotion in the depths of the endless ice plains must be extremely huge. The bigger the commotion, the greater the harvest after exploration. He could not help but have the urge to explore. His current strength was not weak. His terrifyingly strengthened physical body gave him the ability to fight against a level 2 desolation level. In addition, he could barely reach the level 2 desolation level with his blood fiends. Even if he encountered a level 2 desolation level existence, the victor would only be determined after a battle. If he counted Stanley Grinton, his combat strength could reach level 3 desolation level. With such a powerful combat strength, he was qualified to explore. At this moment, a giant bird with green fur and a wingspan of 1 meter appeared in the sky above Fergus Castle. It circled above Fergus Castle. When it discovered Gray, it quickly lowered its altitude. Finally, it retracted its wings and landed on the ground, standing not far away from Gray. This was the murderous level blood fiend Wind Eagle. However, it had been cultivated by the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family as a messenger bird. It was responsible for delivering letters from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. Gray looked at the Wind Eagle's feet. Indeed, there was a ribbon tied around one of its feet. When he untied the ribbon, he saw an envelope with the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family's emblem. After opening the envelope and skimming through its contents, Gray's lips curled into a smile. There were only a few lines in the letter. The content was an invitation to follow the royal family to explore the endless ice plains. It was not mandatory, but an invitation. If Gray was willing, he would have to gather at a city near the endless ice plains in the Scarlet Kingdom within a week. If he was unwilling, there was no need to force him. After writing a reply, Gray tied it to the Wind Eagle's feet and released it. He would definitely accept the invitation. He already had plans to explore the endless ice plains. Now that he was invited by the royal family to explore, he was naturally very happy. Although he was not weak, following the royal family would undoubtedly guarantee his safety. I have to reach the Scarlet Kingdom's border near the endless ice plains in a week. It's a bit of a rush, so I have to set off as soon as possible. After greeting the Fergus family, Gray set off for the Scarlet Kingdom on the same day. He did not take a carriage. It was impossible to reach the endless ice plains in a week if he took an ordinary carriage. He temporarily removed Stanley Grinton's control and changed it to a 7-meter-long bear-shaped blood fiend covered in yellow fur. This was a desolate-level blood fiend, a wild bear. Gray had exchanged merits for it on the battlefield with the Flame Kingdom. It had the ability to manipulate gravity when it was alive, but it was naturally gone now. Although its combat strength was not as good as Stanley Grinton's, it was undoubtedly very suitable as a means of transportation. Thump, thump, thump. Along the trade route, the 7-meter-long wild bear, weighing several tons, hurried along on all fours. Along the way, it encountered many caravans, causing a commotion. They thought it was a high-level blood fiend attack, especially during this special period when the Scarlet Kingdom was being attacked by a beast tide. Almost everyone was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow and easily caused panic. It was only when they saw Gray sitting on the giant bear that the panic stopped. What was left was uncontrollable amazement and curiosity, guessing Gray's identity. Gray was not the only one causing panic. The Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, the Kenneth family, the Addison family, and the Nahum family also had people hurrying along. Obviously, they wanted to reach the endless ice plains as soon as possible to seize the opportunity. The blood of the next blood fiend must be from the Wind Falcon. Sitting on the wild bear, Gray was slightly regretful. He did not possess the bloodline of a bird-type blood fiend and could not use the power of blood to simulate the flight of wings. Although the flying ability of a bird-type blood fiend might not necessarily be faster than that of a land animal, it was very suitable for hurrying along. After all, flying in the sky was a straight line, while running on the ground would encounter various obstacles and take many detours. Generally speaking, the speed of a bird-type blood fiend was not slow among those of the same realm. Moreover, with Gray's current ability to control corpses, after controlling Stanley Grinton, he could not control anything else. In order to control this wild bear, he removed his control over Stanley Grinton. This would inevitably cause his strength to not be at its peak. If he encountered an enemy while hurrying along, it would undoubtedly be a very bad situation. Although the speed of the wild bear could not be compared to that of a bird-type blood fiend of the same realm, it only took him 2 days to enter the territory of the Scarlet Kingdom. He rushed toward the border of the Scarlet Kingdom near the Ice Plains. In 3 days, he had entered the Scarlet Kingdom's border area, which was the most affected area of the Beast Tide. Chapter 468. Entering the disaster area, Gray saw an extremely wide area where no living people could be seen. There were dead cities one after another, ruins after ruins, piles of bones, and a strong stench. During the day, all kinds of scavengers shuttled back and forth, treating this place as their paradise. At night, ghosts wandered in the dead cities, letting out horrifying screams. There was not a single living person in sight. This was a forbidden area for humans. The remaining journey was not far. Gray put away the wild bear and controlled Stanley Grinton again, hurrying on foot. Screech! A shrill scream came from the sky. Gray looked up and saw a giant bird with a wingspan of 7 or 8 meters, covered in flame-like feathers, flying across the sky. This was a blood fiend that came with the Beast Tide, but did not return to the ice field in the end. The other party seemed to have noticed Gray and turned back. It quickly lowered its altitude and stretched out its sharp claws, which were as sharp as magical weapons, to grab Gray. This was the Flamingo, a barbaric-level blood fiend with the ability to control fire. Gray did not dodge. Near him, a large amount of black metal powder floated up and turned into sharp blades one after another. Lightning flashed on the sharp blades like tens of thousands of arrows being shot at the same time, attacking the Flamingo. Screech! Flamingo let out a mournful shriek. Its body quickly dodged and spat out a long tongue of flame, burning the lightning blade that was coming towards it. Some of the lightning blades were melted into liquid metal, but compared to the huge number of lightning blades, it was insignificant. Puff, puff, puff. One after another, the lightning blades pierced through the Flamingo's body. There was no blood spilling out, only charred wounds. Finally, the Flamingo's body was charred black, and it fell straight to the ground. After passing the Flamingo, Gray continued to move forward. This was the 13th blood fiend he had encountered. Although the king-level powerhouses of the Scarlet King had repelled the Beast Tide and even driven it back to the endless ice field, there were still many blood fiends lingering on this land. This land was now very dangerous. If one did not have the strength of a desolate-level powerhouse, it was almost impossible to move forward. In the evening, Gray pitched a tent on a wasteland and lit a bonfire. There were still 2 days before the rendezvous. Gray was not in a hurry to meet up with them, so he slowed down and did not rush at night. A beast leg that weighed more than 50 kilograms was skinned, washed, and roasted over the bonfire. Golden oil dripped down, and a rich aroma wafted out. This was the right foreleg of an unnamed blood fiend he had killed along the way. As his strength increased, his appetite also increased. Although the situation of the other blood warriors was similar to him, the increase in his appetite was obviously more terrifying. Now, he was eating blood fiend's flesh for almost every meal. This wasn't because his strength had increased or because he wanted to improve his quality of life, but because he was forced to. As his strength increased, the amount of meat he ate for each meal also increased. In the end, he had to eat dozens of kilograms of livestock meat for one meal. Eating dozens of kilograms of meat for one meal was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that it was extremely time-consuming. He had to spend a lot of time eating every day. Therefore, he had been eating the flesh of blood fiends for every meal. Moreover, it was usually the flesh of barbarian or desolate-level blood fiends. Only the flesh of barbarian or desolate-level blood fiends, which had extremely nourishing properties, could satisfy his daily consumption without consuming too much of it. Sitting next to the bonfire, Gray cut a large piece of meat and ate heartily. Crack! In the forest not far away, the sound of trees shaking violently could be heard. It was even accompanied by the sound of trees collapsing. Obviously, a big guy was coming this way. Before Gray could move, Stanley Grinton, who had been ordered by Gray to be on guard, had already dashed into the forest. Pop! The sound of flesh being cut rang out. The forest regained its tranquility. Many trees had collapsed due to the commotion caused by the fight just now. Stanley Grinton returned with his broken saber back in its sheath. He once again stood not far away from the tent, loyally guarding Gray's safety. Gray did not intend to see what kind of blood fiend it was, and continued eating. Crack! However, not long after, a huge commotion could be heard not far away from the previous location. Swish! Stanley Grinton dashed out again and scuttled into the forest. In an instant, the commotion in the forest disappeared again. Stanley Grinton had returned once more. I actually encountered 2 blood fiends in such a short period of time. Could they have been attracted by the smell of roasted meat? Gray had some doubts in his heart. He planned to check out what kind of blood fiends had attacked him after finishing his meal. Crack! Just as he was thinking about this, the sound of trees collapsing could be heard from the forest again. Pop, pop! Stanley Grinton dashed into the forest with his saber. This time, he was unable to finish off his opponent immediately. After exchanging blows for a short while, he finally finished off his opponent completely. Something's not right. Gray swallowed the remaining roasted meat in one gulp and stood up. The blood fiends attacking tonight were not normal. According to common sense, it should not be so frequent. He walked to the last location where he had heard the commotion and saw the blood fiend that Stanley Grinton had spent a lot of effort to kill. It was a huge blood fiend with golden skin. On its head, there were 2 curved blade-like horns, one long and the other short. It's actually a golden rhinoceros. No wonder Stanley Grinton had to spend a lot of effort to kill it. Gray's face showed a hint of understanding. The golden rhinoceros was a desolate-level blood fiend. Moreover, among desolate-level blood fiends, it was known for its defense. Its physical defense was enough to make it difficult for a level 1 desolate-level powerhouse to injure it. With such a strong physical body, it was no wonder that Stanley Grinton had to spend a lot of effort to kill it. Green looked at the wounds on the golden rhinoceros. There were several deep wounds on the golden rhinoceros body. Each wound was so deep that the bones could be seen. Stanley Grinton's destructive power as a level 3 desolate-level powerhouse was unmistakable. The most serious wound had almost split the rhinoceros head in half. This wound should be the reason why the golden rhinoceros was completely killed. It's barely bleeding? Gray looked around the golden rhinoceros with a puzzled expression. With such a huge wound, the golden rhinoceros should have lost a lot of blood. However, on the contrary, there was almost no blood flowing from the golden rhinoceros body. Could it be? Gray narrowed his eyes and thought of a possibility. Crack, crack! At this moment, the sound of trees being brutally broken was heard. From 2 different directions, 2 more blood fiends rushed over. Soon, the figures of the 2 blood fiends appeared. With the help of the moonlight, Gray saw that one of the blood fiends was 6 meters long. Its body was covered with golden red fur, and it looked like a huge lion. This was a desolate-level blood fiend, the blazing lion. It was a type of blood fiend that could cover its entire body. It could be used as both an offensive and defensive weapon. The other blood fiend looked like a lizard. If its tail was included, it was 9 meters long. Its surface was covered with green scales that looked like they were polished from jade. This was a desolate-level blood fiend, the Jade Dragon. Gray's reverse nurturing ability was obtained from this type of blood fiend. As expected, seeing the 2 blood fiends, Gray murmured. His eyes were burning with passion. He had night vision. The reason why he had to use the moonlight to see the 2 blood fiends clearly was that the temperature of the 2 blood fiends was almost the same as the temperature of the surrounding environment. In other words, these 2 blood fiends were already corpses. Could it be that the one controlling them is an Umbra ape? Gray's eyes were filled with anticipation. The Umbra ape was a desolate-level blood fiend with a cadaveric hair ape bloodline. Just like Gray's cadaveric hair ape bloodline, the Umbra ape bloodline also had the ability to control corpses. What's more, the level and number of corpses it could control were higher. So far, Gray had encountered 3 desolate-level blood fiends. If the first 2 were also desolate-level blood fiends, then the one controlling the corpses must be a desolate-level blood fiend, the Umbra ape. Needless to say, its ability to control corpses was powerful. Stanley Grinton, who was currently pouncing on one of the desolate-level blood fiends, was the best proof. Although the cadaveric hair ape bloodline was only a berserk-level bloodline, after Gray obtained the corpse of a king-level warrior, he was able to unleash a terrifying level 3 desolate-level combat strength. If the one controlling these blood fiends was a desolate-level blood fiend, Gray could kill it and obtain its blood. The number of king-level corpses he could control would increase to 4 if he could obtain its blood. 4 king-level corpses, even if they were not corpses of the physical type, would be enough for Gray to defeat anyone at the desolate level. He could even put up a fight against a king-level fighter. Of course, the most likely outcome would be defeat. Under Gray's command, Stanley Grinton swung his saber at the Jade Dragon's head. With one slash, the Jade Dragon's brain juice spurted out and it became completely stiff. On the other side, Gray attacked the Flaming Lion. A long river of black fog appeared, and large patches of trees disappeared. The Flaming Lion was also enveloped in the fog. The Flaming Lion's fur quickly disappeared, and it struggled violently in the black fog. Unfortunately, after losing its Blood Fiend ability, its combat strength was not even comparable to that of an ordinary desolate-level Blood Fiend. Naturally, it could not break free from Gray's black fog, which had reached level 2 desolate-level power. Under the black fog, the Flaming Lion's flesh and blood melted away. Eventually, its skull was exposed, and its body completely lost its ability to move. With Stanley Grinton in tow, Gray headed in the direction of the 2 desolate-level blood fiends. After walking for a few hundred meters, he suddenly heard a huge commotion in front of him. It was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were rushing toward him. He stopped in his tracks and looked forward. Immediately, he saw hundreds of blood fiends rushing over in a grandiose manner. There were desolate-level blood fiends, barbaric-level blood fiends, and even maniacal-level blood fiends. Among these blood fiends, there was an 8-meter-long ape-type blood fiend covered in white fur. It was like a bonfire in the night, and Gray could see it clearly. This was because only this blood fiend's temperature was different from the surrounding environment. It was truly alive. Judging from its size and the number of blood fiends it controlled, it was definitely a desolate-level blood fiend, a flaming ape. Chapter 469. Under the purple moonlight, hundreds of blood fiends rushed over. The ground shook violently, and the birds and beasts that were resting on the trees flew away in fright. It was as if a beast tide was happening. Although their numbers were not comparable to a real beast tide, their strength made up for the lack of numbers. Hundreds of blood fiends were at least murderous level, and their momentum was not inferior to a normal beast tide. This is ridiculous. Looking at such a beast tide, Gray was surprised. Although he knew that the Gloom Ape could control a large number of blood fiends, he did not expect it to be to this extent. The beast tide, caused by the abnormal movement in the depths of the endless ice field, had helped the Gloom Ape achieve its goal. The blood fiends that died in the beast tide were probably under its control. As the beast tide approached, Gray and Stanley Grinton both took action. Puff, puff, puff. Stanley Grinton rushed into the beast tide and unsheathed his broken sword. Every time he slashed, a blood fiend would be cut in half. Chi, chi, chi. On the other hand, Gray's black fog river, which was dozens of meters wide, surged out and collided with the beast tide. Immediately, a large number of blood fiends were swept into the black fog river and frantically struggled within. The flesh and blood of these blood fiends were disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, all that was left were withered skeletons that had been corroded beyond recognition. Some of the weaker ones didn't even have skeletons left. They had been completely turned into ashes. However, there were too many blood fiends. Even with the black fog river, it was difficult to stop all the blood fiends. Swoosh! A 5-meter-long tiger-shaped blood fiend appeared beside Gray. Its body was covered in black and white veins, and its sharp claws were aimed at Gray's throat. Puff! Still maintaining control of the black fog river, Gray unsheathed his sword and pierced the eye of the tiger-shaped blood fiend. His strength had reached level 1 of the Desolation level, so the power of his sword was not inferior to that of a level 2 barbarian-level blood fiend. Encountering a slight obstruction, the sword pierced through the eye of the tiger-shaped blood fiend and through its brain. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Just as the tiger-shaped blood fiend fell, another 3 blood fiends that were about the same size as the tiger-shaped blood fiend pounced on Gray. One of them was an unknown blood fiend that was covered in gray fur and looked like a goat or a cow. One was a wolf-type blood fiend. One was a blood fiend with spikes all over its body. Gray swung his sword to the left and slashed across the neck of the gray-haired blood fiend, sending its head flying. Then, he pierced through the mouth of the wolf-type blood fiend and penetrated its skull. At this moment, the blood fiend with spikes all over its body had already arrived in front of Gray. Its spiked body ruthlessly slammed into Gray. Holes appeared on Gray's clothes one after another, and he was knocked back more than 10 steps. However, after metallization, his strong defense was enough to make a second desolate-level blood warrior unable to do anything to him, so he did not suffer any injuries. He rushed to the side of the blood fiend that was covered in spikes. With a sweep of his long sword, he instantly sliced off a large piece of its skull. White brain matter flowed out, and the blood fiend that was covered in spikes collapsed with a plop. Swish, swish, swish. More and more blood fiends rushed over, attacking Gray from all directions. All of a sudden, a black mist surged out from Gray's surroundings like a tidal wave. All of the blood fiends were slapped away by the black mist, and large chunks of flesh and blood on their bodies disappeared. Clang, clang. Under the attacks of Gray and Stanley Grinton, the blood fiends fell one after another. Soon, more than 100 blood fiends had fallen. Especially under Stanley Grinton's attacks, almost none of the blood fiends could withstand more than 2 strikes from him. The speed at which he killed the blood fiends was even faster than Gray, who had an area of effect attack like the Black Mist. However, the Umbra Ape was also very cunning. Gray ordered Stanley Grinton to attack the Umbra Ape several times, but it was blocked by the Umbra Ape's blood fiends. The Umbra Ape hid under the heavy protection of the blood fiends and used them as its shields, preventing Gray and Stanley Grinton from getting close to it. Let's see how long you can hide. After a few failed attacks, Gray decided to give up on attacking the Umbra Ape directly. Whether it was him or Stanley Grinton, they both had terrifying defenses that the blood fiends could not harm. They were already in an invincible position. If the battle continued, the number of blood fiends would decrease, and the Umbra Ape would have nowhere to hide. Plop, plop. Another 100 blood fiends fell. There were less than 100 blood fiends guarding the Umbra Ape. The Umbra Ape seemed to have sensed the danger, and its eyes flickered. Squeak, squeak. The Umbra Ape let out a sharp squeak. Then, all the blood fiends went berserk. They no longer dodged the attacks. Instead, they surrounded Gray and Stanley Grinton, while the Umbra Ape fled in the direction it came from. Do you think you can escape? The black fog tumbled, and a large amount of black fog appeared. However, the front part of the black fog was divided into 2, like a forked river. A vacuum was formed in the middle, trapping the hundreds of blood fiends in the middle. Stanley Grinton avoided the black fog and chased after the Umbra Ape while Gray did so. Chee, chee, chee. One after another, the blood fiends crashed into the black fog. Their bodies quickly melted in the black fog, but they continued to advance. Even with the might of the black fog, it was dispersed by the blood fiends. Gray was immediately surrounded by a large number of blood fiends. The black fog wrapped around the longsword, making it a few meters long. Gray swung his sword rapidly while surrounded by the blood fiends. Poof, poof. One blood fiend after another was cleaved in half by his swings. All kinds of internal organs fell to the ground, and white brain tissue scattered everywhere. With his stage 1 desolate level strength and his barely stage 2 desolate level blood fiends, other than the desolate level blood fiends, none of the other blood fiends could withstand his sword. One by one, the blood fiends were cleaved in half. Since they were controlled corpses, they did not stop even after their bodies were cleaved in half. However, it was obvious that their struggles were futile. Facing the encirclement of close to 100 blood fiends, Gray was not completely unharmed. From time to time, he would be sent flying by the blood fiends' attacks. His clothes were tattered, but he was not injured. His strong defense was not something that these blood fiends, who were only stage 1 desolate level at most, could hurt. Thump, thump, thump. Suddenly, all the blood fiends seemed to have been attacked by a soul attack. Their souls shattered and disappeared, and they all fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Seeing this scene, Gray was not surprised. He stood in place and waited. If he was not mistaken, Stanley Grinton had killed the Phantom Ape. As expected, Stanley Grinton returned after a while. He was carrying the Phantom Ape's body, which was much larger than his body, with one hand as if he was carrying a huge rock. Gray hurriedly went forward to collect the blood. After collecting all the blood, he thought for a while and kept the Phantom Ape's corpse as well. Although the method of refining corpse-controlling demonic weapons had disappeared with the fall of the Empire, if this method was discovered again one day, the corpse of the Phantom Ape would be of great use. Together with its blood, it could be used to refine corpse-controlling demonic weapons. The next morning, Gray set off. After encountering many blood fiends, Gray rushed to the rendezvous point and met up with the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Not only the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom, but also the Kenneth family, the Addison family, and the Nahum family were there. Apart from them, there were also people from the Scarlet Kingdom and the Jewel Kingdom. Gray saw some familiar faces among them, such as the Scarlet Prince, Lars Scarlet, and the Jewel Queen, Glenn Y. Austin. Why don't I see any king-level experts? Gray asked curiously. With such a huge incident occurring in the depths of the endless ice field, it was reasonable to say that king-level experts would have rushed over. However, there were no king-level experts from the three kingdoms. They have already set off to investigate the depths of the endless ice field. Sophia, who was dressed in blue battle armor and had a slim figure, said as she brushed her purple hair behind her ear, "What happened in the depths of the endless ice field? Did you hear anything from the Scarlet Kingdom?" "No. Although the Scarlet Kingdom is close to the Scarlet Kingdom, they probably don't know much more about the incident than we do." Francis, who was dressed in bronze battle armor and had an outstanding temperament, shook his head. There were king-level blood fiends in the Beast Tide this time, and there was more than one. The Scarlet Kingdom spent a lot of effort to repel the Beast Tide. When we arrived, the Scarlet Kingdom had just cleared the Beast Tide and had not had time to investigate. There were king-level blood fiends, and there was more than one. Gray was shocked. Although he knew that the Scarlet Kingdom had encountered a Beast Tide and millions of people had died, he did not know the exact scale of the Beast Tide. He did not expect that there would be more than one king-level blood fiend in the Beast Tide. It was no wonder that there were so many casualties. What about those king-level blood fiends? Will we encounter them when we explore the endless ice field? Gray was a little worried. Although he was not weak now, it would still be difficult for him to face a king-level blood fiend. No, all the king-level blood fiends have been killed by the Scarlet Kingdom. Sophia shook her head. But this time, we have to be careful of the Flame Kingdom. The Flame Kingdom? The Flame Kingdom has also arrived at the endless ice field. How did they get past the blockade of our three kingdoms? Gray's heart skipped a beat. The Flame Kingdom was a landlocked country, located in the middle of the Purple Moon, Scarlet, and Gem Kingdoms. It was not connected to the endless ice field. Logically speaking, it was impossible for the other party to avoid the territories of the three kingdoms and arrive at the endless ice field. With such a big change in the endless ice field, the Flame Kingdom will definitely come to investigate. Although it is impossible for them to send a large number of people to get past the blockade of our three kingdoms, it is possible for them to send a small number of people to sneak in secretly. Francis explained, but don't worry too much. After all, this is the home ground of our three kingdoms. Even if the Flame Kingdom sent people to sneak in, they will be at a disadvantage in terms of numbers compared to our three kingdoms. Of course, don't trust the Jewel Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom too much. If you find something good, you have to be careful of the two kingdoms. Chapter 470. The next day, the three kingdoms set off one after another. They did not move together. Not only the three kingdoms, but even their own kingdoms did the same. Within the Purple Moon Kingdom, the Kenneth family, the Addison family, and the Nahum family set off on their own. The royal family's team also set off separately. This time, they were going to investigate the reason for the strange movement deep in the endless ice field. Under the circumstances of ensuring their safety, it was naturally better to spread out as far as possible. Gray followed the royal family. In their group, other than him, there was Sophia and the three elders of the royal family. There were a total of 5 people. Walking in the endless ice field, there was not thick snow under their feet, but mud and weeds. The endless ice field was not filled with icebergs. In the outer regions, there were also green plants that were not covered by ice. However, as they approached the depths of the endless ice field, the temperature would become lower and lower. In the end, the surroundings would become a world of ice and snow, a vast expanse of white. Along the way, Gray and the rest were very careful. However, they still could not avoid encountering blood fiends, and many of them were quite powerful. In the endless ice field, blood fiends were already very dense. In addition to the beast tide, the distribution of blood fiends in the endless ice field was very messy. Even in the outer regions, it was possible to encounter a desolate-level blood fiend. Hiss! A giant snake with 4 heads discovered Gray and the rest. Its 4 heads spat out snake pistols, and the snake's eyes with vertical pupils stared coldly at Gray and the rest. After a moment of confrontation, the 4-headed snake launched an attack. Whoosh! A blackhead suddenly spat out a large amount of black fog. The surrounding plants quickly melted under the black fog. This was a poison attribute ability. Whoosh! A water-colored head spat out a water column. The water column carried high pressure and pierced downwards like a sharp sword. Crackle! A blue head spat out a winding lightning bolt that was as thick as a water bucket. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Metal spikes appeared around a golden head and rained down like raindrops. 4-headed snake was a blood beast with 4 heads and 4 different blood beast abilities. It was rumored that the bloodline of this blood beast originated from the legendary 10-headed mythical beast, Hydra. However, there was naturally a huge difference between the 4-headed snake bloodline and the legendary 10-headed divine beast Hydra. Although it had 4 heads, the power of the blood beast ability that each head controlled was very mediocre. Voila! Gray made his move. Black fog rolled out like a river. It was several meters tall and dozens of meters wide. It had the destructive power of Desolation Grade Level 2 and easily blocked all of the 4-headed snake's attacks. Not only that, but the long river of black fog also pushed forward, drowning the 4-headed snake in the black fog. The 4-headed snake struggled madly in the black fog. Using the abilities of the 4 blood fiends, it finally broke free from the black fog river. However, its entire body was dripping with blood, and large chunks of flesh had disappeared. Whoosh! Gray approached the 4-headed serpent with his great sword shrouded in black mist. The 4-headed serpent sensed him and swung its 4 heads, baring its sharp, venomous fangs to attack Gray. Puff! The black greatsword in Gray's hand swept out, and one of the black heads was chopped off. Then he quickly dodged, and in the next moment, 3 heads smashed into the place where he was just standing, and the ground splashed with rocks and dirt. Puff! In the midst of the splattering, Gray approached and swung his black greatsword. Another head fell off. Although he was still at the 2nd level of the Barbarian grade, Gray's speed had reached the 1st level of the Desolation grade because he had consumed the Diamond King beast blood. Puff, puff! In the end, the other 2 heads of the 4-headed snake were also cut off by Gray. The 4-headed snake's huge body fell to the ground with a plop. Large amounts of blood flowed out from the severed heads. Gray quickly took out his rune bag to collect the blood. After collecting the blood, he also put away the snake's corpse. The blood and flesh of a Desolation grade blood beast were extremely valuable, and the purple ring space was extremely large. He was not worried that it would be full. Its destructive power has indeed reached the 2nd level of the Desolation grade. Its speed and strength have also reached the 1st level of the Desolation grade. Seeing Gray kill the four-headed snake so easily, Sophia was not surprised, but the three elders of the kingdom were slightly surprised. They had heard of Gray's strength, but they were skeptical. After all, it was too exaggerated for a 20-year-old to have the destructive power of a desolation gray blood beast. Now, it seemed that not only was it not exaggerated, but they had also underestimated him. The five of them continued their journey into the depths of the endless ice field. Along the way, they encountered many blood beasts. All five of them fought, and even Sophia killed a desolation gray blood beast. It was obvious that her combat power was not weaker than an ordinary desolation gray blood beast. Moreover, with her terrifying speed, if she wanted to escape, even a desolation gray blood beast would not be able to stop her. The temperature has obviously dropped. Gray exhaled, but it was immediately turned into a cloud of mist by the cold air outside. The air temperature had obviously dropped, and the plants they saw were all cold-resistant. Roar, woo-woo. Suddenly, the loud roar of a blood beast entered their ears, accompanied by a loud, clanging sound. The five of them immediately became alert and listened carefully. There are two types of blood beasts. There should be two blood beasts fighting, Sophia deduced. With such a big commotion, the two blood beasts fighting should be of high levels. They should both be desolation gray blood beasts. Gray added, "Let's go and see what's going on." One of the elders of the Purple Moon Kingdom suggested. This time, they were investigating the cause of the strange movements in the endless ice field. Since there were desolation gray blood beasts fighting, they naturally had to go and investigate. In order not to alarm the two blood beasts, the five of them tried their best to approach as quietly as possible. They hid behind a rock and saw the two blood beasts fighting. One of the blood beasts was 10 meters long. Its body was as heavy as a mountain, and its four claws were extremely huge, like the claws of an excavator. Its body was covered with bronze scales, and there were sharp spikes on its back. Copperback dragon. Gray recognized the type of blood beast. It was a desolation gray blood beast, the copperback dragon. The Sydney family had once owned this type of blood beast, but it had died at the hands of the king of assassins. Its metallization ability also came from this type of blood beast. The copperback dragon, known for its defense, is actually in such a miserable state. With the copperback dragon's defense, it should have been able to protect itself even if it was not a match for other desolation gray blood beasts. However, the copperback dragon was currently in a miserable state. Many of the spikes on its back were broken, and many of the scales on its body had fallen off. There were even large chunks of flesh that had been torn off from its body, and bronze blood was constantly flowing out. To be able to injure the copperback dragon so severely, one could only imagine the strength of the blood beast that was fighting it. Gray could not help but look at the blood beast that was fighting it. It was a blood beast that was about 9 meters long. It stood on its hind legs and looked like an ape. However, on its forehead, there was a sharp horn. Furthermore, only had a single eye, and it just so happened to be located below the sharp horn. Its appearance was exactly the same as the description of the king beast that Gray had seen in the book Physical Ability. This was definitely a king beast. A king beast. This voice did not come from Gray, but from Sophia, who was beside Gray. Although Gray had obtained a precious book from the Empire and knew about the existence of this kind of blood fiend, the royal family's background was not bad either. They had also obtained similar books from other places, and Sophia also knew about the existence of this kind of blood fiend. That's not right. A king beast's body is usually more than 10 meters long. This blood beast is only 9 meters long. Although it is indeed a king beast, it is not an adult yet. An elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom judged. Although it is not an adult yet, it should not be far away. This king beast combat power is not inferior to that of a desolate level 3rd stage. Another elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom said. This was an old man with thinning hair. His name was Mubus Violet. Gray had seen him kill a desolate level blood beast with a single strike. If he was not mistaken, he should be a desolate level 3rd stage blood beast. It's a pity that I am the only desolate level 3rd stage blood beast here. Otherwise, I could try to hunt it down. Hunt it down? Grandpa Mubus, you want to use the King Beast to refine a magical weapon? Sophia asked. She knew that Mubus Violet was a weapon refiner, so she immediately thought that Mubus Violet wanted to use the King Beast to refine a magical weapon. Yes, in an ancient book from the Empire, I found a method to refine a magical armor. However, this magical armor requires the scales and blood of the King Beast. Mubus Violet said, Gray, this King Beast is very useful to the royal family. I will have to trouble you and Grandpa Mubus to work together. Sophia nodded and looked at Gray. No problem. You can have the blood and scales, but the corpse will be mine. Gray agreed. He owed the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom a lot of favors. Since Sophia asked for it, he naturally did not mind helping. Moreover, he was also interested in the corpse of the King Beast. To a certain extent, this King Beast body was not inferior to a king-level expert. On the other hand, the old man surprised Yifutian. He was a craftsman, and most likely a master craftsman of a high level. After all, the armor that the old man wanted to craft required the scales and blood of the King Kong beast, so it had to be of a high level. The three elders of the Purple Moon Kingdom looked at Gray and Sophia strangely. From the conversation between the two, they judged that Gray seemed to be at the third stage of the desolation level. Otherwise, Sophia would not have asked Gray and Mubus Violet to work together. Roar! Just as Gray and the other four were whispering to each other, the battle on the other side was nearing its end. The King Beast stepped on the copperback dragon's body and grabbed the copperback dragon's tail, tearing it violently. Rip! A clear sound was heard. Under the King Beast's tearing, the copperback dragon's tail was torn off, and bronze blood spurted out. After throwing away the broken tail, the King Beast grabbed one of the copperback dragon's legs. Without exception, the copperback dragon's leg was torn off as well. In the eyes of Gray and the other four, a brutal scene appeared. The 10-meter-long copperback dragon was torn apart by the King Kong Beast King's attack. Its head, for legs, tail, and body were all separated. The huge copperback dragon was completely dismembered. Chapter 471. Roar! After dismembering the copperback dragon, the King Beast let out a bloodthirsty roar. It grabbed one of the copperback dragon's thighs and started tearing them apart. With the King Beast's third desolate level strength, it should have been easy to kill the copperback dragon, but it didn't do so. Instead, it killed the copperback dragon in the most brutal way possible. It wasn't hard to see the King Beast's violent nature from this. The King Beast was definitely one of the most violent blood beasts. Whoosh! Looking at the King Beast feasting in the distance, Stanley Grinton suddenly appeared beside Gray. Other than Sophia, the three elders of the Purple Moon Kingdom were all shocked. They didn't know that Gray had the ability to control corpses, and that he was controlling the former Stanley Grinton. Whoosh! After greeting Mubus Violet without further explanation, Gray controlled Stanley Grinton to charge at the King Beast. With Mubus Violet's speed, the distance of a few hundred meters was covered in an instant. Roar! On the other side, the King Beast had already noticed Stanley Grinton the moment he charged out. It threw away the copperback dragon's thigh in its hand and looked at Stanley Grinton with a violent gaze. Instead of retreating, it charged forward. Its huge fist, wrapped in a hard layer of cuticle and the size of a millstone, punched towards Stanley Grinton. Boom! Stanley Grinton dodged to the side. The millstone-sized fist smashed into the ground, creating a huge crater with a diameter of more than 10 meters. Bang! After dodging to the side, Stanley Grinton stomped on the ground. His body shot up like a cannonball. He unsheathed the broken sword at his waist and slashed at the King Beast's neck. Although the King Beast was huge, its reaction wasn't slow. Its other fist appeared and blocked the sword. Clang! The fist and the broken sword collided. Both the King Beast and Stanley Grinton couldn't help but retreat. They were evenly matched. Whether it was speed or strength, the man and beast were evenly matched. Stanley Grinton had once been a King-class expert. His strength and speed were both at the King class. Although the King Kong beast was only at the third level of the Desolation class, its body-type bloodline made its strength and speed comparable to a king-class expert. Whoosh! After stabilizing themselves, the man and beast charged at each other again. Stanley Grinton jumped up and aimed at the king beast's throat again. The king beast slapped Stanley Grinton from the side. Just King Beast slapped the king's giant beast paw. Stanley Grinton made a strange movement in the air. He stomped in the air, and his body suddenly grew taller, as if he was stepping on an invisible staircase. He dodged the giant palm and slashed at the King Kong beast's throat. He was a king-class expert when he was alive. His strength and speed were no different from a king-class expert. Stanley Grinton also had the ability to stay in the air. Puff! The King Kong beast tilted its body slightly, and the broken sword landed on its shoulder. The King Kong beast was sent flying with a loud bang. However, the injury wasn't serious. The King Beast got up and continued to pounce on Stanley Grinton. The King Beast defense was also at the level of a normal King Beast warrior. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of explosions rang out continuously. It was as if a giant cannon was firing. The man and beast, who had a huge difference in height, continued to fight. Potholes with a diameter of more than 10 meters appeared in the surrounding area. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, four thick metal chains shot up from the ground around the King Beast. They wrapped around the King Beast's body, binding the King Beast's legs and hands. Mubus Violet, who was at the third level of the Desolation level, rushed over to help. He didn't use the Purple Flame Beast Sequence Blood technique, which was widely known in the Purple Moon Kingdom. Instead, he used the metal ability. This ability had an unusual sensitivity to metal. It was very helpful for refining weapons. Crash! The King Beast, whose hands and feet were bound by the four thick metal chains, roared in anger. It struggled furiously. Visible cracks appeared on the metal chains. Given the toughness of the metal chains, it was almost impossible for a third-level Desolation level underage King Beast to break free. However, the King Beast was different. Although it was underage and wasn't a real King Beast, its strength wasn't any weaker than a normal King Beast. Naturally, it wasn't included. Whoosh! The King Beast's hands and feet were bound by the metal chains. Stanley Grinton, who was controlled by Gray, naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. Using the strength and speed of a King Beast, Stanley Grinton stayed in the air at the same height as the King Beast. He slashed the broken sword at the huge eye in the middle of the King Beast's head. The King Kong beast lowered its head abruptly, avoiding its eyes. Its thick horns collided with the broken saber, knocking Stanley Grinton back. Crack! The metal chains were already full of cracks. Seeing that it was about to break free, Gray controlled Stanley Grinton to approach again. He no longer aimed at the eye, but at the throat. Puff! A shallow wound appeared on the King Kong Beast King's throat, and dark red blood flowed out. At the same time, the King Beast broke free of the metal chains and punched Stanley Grinton. Stanley Grinton was sent flying, creating a crater more than 10 meters deep in the ground. However, there were no wounds on his body. He jumped out of the crater and pounced at the King Beast again. When the King Beast's fist came down, Gray had already used his metallization ability on Stanley Grinton. Stanley Grinton's defense was increased by a large margin compared to a normal King Beast's. Against Stanley Grinton's defense, even a third-level Desolation level attack from the King Beast would find it difficult to leave a wound on him. Boom, boom, boom. Stanley Grinton and Mubus Violet worked together to fight the King Beast. The shockwaves from their battle affected everything within a few hundred meters. All the plants had disappeared, and there were craters everywhere. Even the hard rocks beneath the ground were exposed, forcing Gray, Sophia, and the others to retreat slightly to avoid being caught in the crossfire. This was a difficult battle. In terms of combat power, Stanley Grinton and the third-level Desolation level expert of the royal family, Mubus Violet, were naturally stronger than the King Beast. However, the King Beast's strong physique made it difficult for Stanley Grinton and Mubus Violet's attacks to injure it. Gray, who was commanding Stanley Grinton from afar, finally understood how Curtis Blaze felt when he faced him on the battlefield with the Flame Kingdom. Even if he used all his strength, he could only leave light injuries on the other party. After slashing it over 100 times, he found that the other party was still alive and kicking. One could imagine the helplessness he felt. Its physique is definitely comparable to that of a king tier. An elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom exclaimed. A third-level desolation level expert already has such a strong physique. If the king beast was at its peak, I'm afraid it could even tear a king tier blood fiend apart. Another elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family exclaimed. Fortunately, we have Sir Gray's powerful combat power this time. Otherwise, with Mubus's strength, it would be a problem for him to escape unscathed. The elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family said solemnly. Although the Purple Moon Kingdom had books that recorded the king beast, their understanding of the king beast was obviously inferior to Gray, who had the bloodline of the king beast. Before the battle, they did not know that the king beast physique was almost the same as that of a king beast. It was only after watching the battle that they made the judgment. Clang! The king beast's fist smashed towards Stanley Grinton, but Stanley Grinton blocked it with his broken sword. The force generated from the collision between the two caused sand and pebbles to fly around. At this moment, a chain as thick as a bucket smashed onto the king beast's body. The king beast flew backward. Before it could get up from the ground, the chain as thick as a bucket split into 4 and bound the king beast's 2 hands and 2 legs. Stanley Grinton appeared and viciously slashed at the king beast's throat with his sword. However, the king beast's throat was left with a light injury that was not fatal. Before he could slash a second time, the king beast had already broken free from the chains. Under the siege of Stanley Grinton and Mubus Violet, the king beast's injuries continued to increase. However, these injuries were not too serious and could not cause fatal damage to the king beast. The two sides continued to fight, and the battle was in a stalemate. A few hours later, the king beast's injuries caused it to lose a lot of blood. It was visibly dispirited, and the large amount of blood loss affected it. Mubus Violet's blood power was almost exhausted. It would take a while before he could help Stanley Grinton. Only Stanley Grinton was still alive and kicking. He was controlled by the ability to control corpses and did not feel fatigue at all. In addition to his strong body, after metallization, the king beast could not hurt him at all. Even after a few hours, there were still no injuries on his body. Bang! The king beast fell to the ground under Stanley Grinton's slash. Hula! 4 thick chains suddenly appeared like 4 giant snakes and tied up the king beast. Swish! Stanley Grinton rushed forward, aimed at the throat, and slashed down with his sword. Puff! The broken sword landed on the King Kong beast's wound, which was already there. It made the wound even deeper. Puff! The king beast, who was no longer in its peak state, could not break free from the chains on its body. The broken sword was raised again and slashed down again. Again at the original wound, the wound became even deeper. Puff! Another slash. Including the previous slash, this place had been slashed 100 times. The king beast's throat was suddenly cut open. Crack! The king beast finally broke free from the shackles on its body and punched Stanley Grinton, sending Stanley Grinton flying. However, after sending Stanley Grinton flying, the king beast was also at the end of its rope. Roar! The king beast, who was at the end of its rope, rolled violently and hammered the ground violently. The surrounding area sank and collapsed. Finally, with an unwilling howl, the king beast fell to the ground with a plop and no longer made a sound. After fighting for several hours, the king beast was finally killed. Chapter 472. It's finally dead. Looking at the king beast that was completely dead and lying on the ground, Gray and the others could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Even Sophia and the other 2 elders of the Purple Moon Kingdom who were paying attention to the battle couldn't help but feel a wave of exhaustion in their hearts. Let alone Mubus Violet, who was participating in the battle, and Gray, who was commanding the battle from afar. A battle that had lasted for several hours was not something that an ordinary person could endure. If it had been 2 level 3 desolation level blood warriors, it was most likely that they would have given up on hunting the king beast. Only Stanley Grinton, who did not need to consume blood power and did not feel fatigue, could have persisted until the end to slay the king beast. Hurry up and collect the blood. This kind of mental exhaustion caused everyone's reactions to become sluggish. After a while, everyone finally reacted and hurried forward to collect the blood. During the battle, the king beast had lost a lot of blood. If it did not collect the blood quickly, the remaining blood might not even be enough to refine equipment. As for extracting the blood essence of the king beast, that was out of the question. The remaining blood was not enough to extract the blood essence. Fortunately, their goal was not to obtain the blood essence of the king beast to implant a bloodline. If that was the case, they were destined to fail. It's barely enough. In the end, everyone collected a total of 4 rune bags and about 800 portions of blood. Although the amount was not considered little, compared to the king beast's 9-meter-tall body and weight of several tons, it was obviously a lot of blood loss. After collecting the blood, everyone was busy peeling the scales off the king beast's body. By the time they were done, it was already close to evening. The 5 of them set up their tents and prepared to rest for the night. The corpse of the king beast naturally belonged to Gray. He temporarily gave up his control over Stanley Grinton and switched it to the king beast. Although the king beast's current appearance was quite miserable, its blood had been drained, its scales had been completely peeled off, and its body was covered in blood. Its brain was not damaged, so it could still control itself. Then, he controlled the king beast to come to an area where the vegetation was still lush and used the reverse nurturing ability. Suddenly, a large amount of green light floated out from these plants and gathered towards the king beast, while these plants withered and turned yellow. The king beast's wounds and scales were recovering, but the rate of recovery was much slower than usual. In the end, Gray used up more than half of his blood force to restore the king beast to its original state. He actually used up so much blood energy. When he was repairing Stanley Grinton, Gray had already discovered that the more powerful the opponent's body was, the more time and blood energy would be needed to repair it. The king beast's body was not inferior to that of a king tier. In addition, there were too many injuries on its body, which ultimately led to Gray using up more than half of his blood energy to repair it. Gray did this without hiding anything. After all, Sophia and the others already knew that he had the ability to control corpses and reverse nurturing. As a result, the 3 elders of the royal family looked at Gray as if they were looking at a monster. They could also see that between Stanley Grinton and the king beast, Gray could only control one. However, when they thought about how difficult it was to kill the king beast, and then how its injuries had completely recovered and it had become Gray's battle strength, they could not help but be amazed. Now, no one below king tier could be his opponent. Gray, boy, let's make a deal. After staring at the king beast for a long time, Mubus Violet looked at Gray with a burning gaze. "Old man, I have something to do. I'll leave first." Being stared at by the other party's burning gaze, Gray trembled all over. He put away the king beast and left as if he was escaping. Mubus Violet's voice sounded behind him. "Don't. Let me peel it a few more times. It'll recover anyway." Gray's steps staggered, and his speed increased. Although the king beast's lost scales could be repaired through reverse nurturing, it would require a lot of blood energy. Even if it were to be peeled again, with his current blood energy, it would not be enough to repair it, let alone peeling it a few more times. In the morning, Gray's group continued their routine training, heading deeper into the endless ice fields. The temperature dropped even lower. On the road, white snow could already be seen on the mountain peaks. Howl! Sounds of fighting could be heard ahead. When Gray's group rushed over, they saw 2 people attacking a blood fiend. There were 4 people standing at the side, not making a move. The blood fiend that the 2 people were attacking was a desolate-level blood fiend. However, the 2 of them were not weak, as they had also reached the desolate level. Working together, they quickly killed the desolate-level blood fiend. They're from the Jewel Kingdom. Gray had seen these 6 people in the Jewel Kingdom's royal team. They were undoubtedly from the Jewel Kingdom. Without greeting the 6 people, Gray's group retreated and continued their journey into the depths of the endless ice fields. In a place like the endless ice fields, if one were to greet them rashly, They might be seen as having ulterior motives and arouse the hostility of the other party. Therefore, other than people from the same kingdom, one would not greet people from other kingdoms if they met them. Along the way, they met a few other teams. Some were from the Purple Moon Kingdom, while others were from other kingdoms. After a few days, Gray's group was already quite deep into the endless ice fields. The temperature had dropped even lower, and snow had accumulated on the ground. The surrounding mountain peaks were all white, but it was not that there were no plants. Amidst the snow and ice, some icy green plants could be seen from time to time. This was the source of food for the herbivores in the endless ice fields. The 5 of them were not weak, so naturally they were not affected by the change in temperature. The 5 of them continued their journey unaffected. There's someone in front. Suddenly, Sophia's delicate eyebrows furrowed as she looked to the left in front of them. Gray and the rest followed her gaze and saw a person lying in the snow in front of them. They could vaguely see red blood stains around him. He's dead. The 5 of them walked over. Gray went forward to check his breathing and found that he was no longer breathing. I've seen this person in the Crimson Kingdom's Duke's team. An old man from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family said. The injuries on his body are from Sharpblade. He wasn't killed by a blood fiend, but by someone else. Another old man from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family said as he flipped the person over and examined the injuries on his body. He must have found something good and was robbed. However, the person who did it was too ruthless. Not only did he rob the item, but he also killed the person. The 5 of them continued on their journey. They were not surprised by this fight. In fact, they had already expected it. The relationship between the 3 kingdoms could not be considered close. When there were interests involved, it was expected that a fight would occur. Moreover, the Flame Kingdom should have also entered the endless ice fields. The possibility of this person being killed by the people from the Flame Kingdom was higher. After all, it was rare for the 3 kingdoms to be so ruthless. A day later, Gray's group of 5 walked on a thick layer of snow. Poof! Suddenly, the snow near Gray's group was pierced through. 4 huge tails with sharp spikes as thick as an adult's thigh pierced through the snow. They were aimed at Gray, Sophia, and the other 2 old men from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. The huge tails were dark brown in color. On the spikes, there was a faint green luster. If he was not wrong, the spikes should be poisonous. It was too sudden. The sneak attack was too sudden and extremely fast. When they noticed it, it was already less than a few meters away from Gray's group. Swoosh! Enveloped in blue light from head to toe, Sophia was able to dodge at the critical moment. Gray and the other 2 old men from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family did not have the speed of Sophia. They could not dodge in time and were immediately pierced by the spikes. Poof, poof! A bloody hole appeared on the 2 old men's bodies. Blood splattered as they were flung away by the huge tails. Their wounds were suffused with a faint green luster. A wave of numbness quickly spread from the wounds to their bodies. Clang! Although Gray's clothes were pierced, he was fine. At the crucial moment, he used his metallization ability and blocked the attack with his strong defense. He was not injured by the attack. Poof! Gray counterattacked. He unsheathed his long sword and stabbed towards the huge tail. It was immediately cut off. One of its huge tails was chopped off, and the blood fiend under the snow let out a hiss. The broken tail and the other 3 huge tails quickly retracted, and the body under the snow quickly fled into the distance. One could vaguely see the snow slightly bulging as it moved. Poof! Mubus Violet made his move. He chased to where the snow bulged and stabbed down with his sword. Accompanied by a sharp hiss, the blood fiend under the snow struggled rapidly. The snow was lifted and the blood fiend under the snow was revealed. It was a blood fiend that looked like a scorpion. However, it had 4 tails. At this moment, its body was deeply stabbed in the back by Mubus Violet's sword. The remaining 3 tails of the blood fiend revealed sharp spikes and pierced towards Mubs Violet. Poof! 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 At this moment, metal chains appeared. Not only did they bind the 3 tentacles, they also pierced through the blood fiend's body. Soon, the blood fiend stopped struggling. Quick, use the antidote! Sophia quickly took out the antidote and fed it to the two elders. Gray changed his clothes and frowned as he looked at the huge scorpion's corpse. Even though their team was made up of desolate-level experts, and there was a third-stage desolate-level expert in the team, there were still people who were injured. It was clear how dangerous the endless icy plains were. After a short rest, the five of them resumed their journey. After traveling for a few miles, their expressions suddenly changed. They quickly hid behind a huge mountain rock. In front of them, one blood fiend after another was moving in the same direction. There were all sorts of blood fiends, from desolate-level blood fiends to murderous-level blood fiends. It was as if a beast tide had occurred. However, it was obvious that this was not a beast tide. These blood fiends were not moving very quickly. They did not seem to be under threat of death. Instead, they seemed to be attracted by something. Chapter 473. Whoosh! An 8-meter-long, tiger-shaped blood fiend charged forward. Every blood fiend that stood in its way was slapped away by its huge claws, leaving deep wounds on its body. Roar! Some of the blood fiends that were slapped away let out furious roars and attacked the tiger-shaped blood fiend. However, the tiger-shaped blood fiend pounced on them, causing them to fall to the ground and bite off their throats, killing them instantly. Some of the blood fiends screamed, but when they saw that it was an 8-meter-long tiger-shaped blood fiend that had slapped them away, they quickly ran away. A gigantic rhinoceros-like blood fiend with golden skin was rampaging forward. One blood fiend after another was knocked away by it. Bright red blood stains appeared on its skin, but it was not its own blood. Instead, it was the blood of the unlucky blood fiends that it had knocked into. Bang! A wolf-shaped blood fiend that was suspected to be a desolate-level blood fiend was enraged. It pounced and bit the throat of the golden blood fiend, but it only managed to break through its skin. On the other hand, the wolf-shaped blood fiend was cut by a long saber-shaped horn on the golden blood fiend's head, causing it to bleed profusely. Knowing that it had encountered a formidable opponent, the wolf-shaped blood fiend voluntarily retreated. A gigantic lion-shaped blood fiend that was covered in golden red flames strode forward gracefully. With it, as the center, a terrifyingly high temperature spread in all directions, causing the snow on the ground to melt. One blood fiend after another fled in panic, as if they were avoiding snakes or scorpions. Some blood fiends that could not dodge in time were immediately touched by the golden red flames. Their bodies burned with the flames, and after struggling for a while, they died completely. Its body emitted a tempting barbecued meat fragrance, causing a few blood fiends to fight over its corpse, causing blood to splatter everywhere. On the snowy ground, one could clearly see paths filled with dark red blood stains. All of these paths led in the same direction. When the world happened, why are so many blood fiends being attracted over? Gray's face revealed his surprise. Based on his estimation, at least 100 blood fiends had passed by in just a short while. Among them, there were 4 or 5 desolate-level blood fiends. Something must have happened up ahead to attract so many blood fiends. They must have been attracted by some precious magic herb. Sophia pondered for a moment and said, "Let's follow them and take a look." Mubus Violet said. The 5 of them followed the path taken by the group of blood fiends. Along the way, fresh blood and the corpses of blood fiends could be seen everywhere. Blood fiends gathered together, so it was inevitable that they would kill each other. After walking for 1 li, a short mountain about 200 to 300 meters tall appeared in front of Gray's group of 5. The mountain was covered in ice and snow, and there were blood fiends all around and on top of the mountain. So many blood fiends. Gray and the other 4 felt their scalps go numb. There were probably over 1,000 blood fiends gathered here, and there was no lack of desolate-level blood fiends. At a glance, there should be 20 to 30 desolate-level blood fiends. What fragrance! Quietly approaching the short mountain, Gray and the other 4 involuntarily sniffed the air. The air was cold, and the air they exhaled was hot. However, in such an environment, there was actually a strange fragrance floating in the air. It drifted over from this short mountain. Gray and the other 4 looked around, and soon they saw a plant with blooming, icy green flowers halfway up the short mountain. Upon closer inspection, they realized that the blood fiends on the short mountain and around it were actually circling around this plant, vaguely protecting it in the center. This is the crystal lotus. Seeing this plant with blooming, icy green flowers, Mubus Violet's expression suddenly became extremely excited. It took him a moment to recover, and he exclaimed excitedly, "Crystal lotus?" Gray was slightly familiar with this name, but he could not recall where he had seen it in a book. This is a magic herb that has the effect of evolving. Its effect is similar to the fruit of evolution. It is compatible with blood arts and can promote bloodline evolution. Sophia explained softly. At this moment, they were hiding in a pile of rocks not far from the short mountain. The surface of the pile of rocks was covered in snow. Evolving herb. It's actually a purifying herb. After Sophia's reminder, Gray suddenly recalled the familiar origin of the name Crystal Lotus. After learning about the evolution herb in Mercenary City, he had looked up the information about it, and that was when he saw the name Crystal Lotus. Speaking of which, he had been extremely close to obtaining the evolution herb, and could even be said to be within reach. That was when he obtained the mysterious silver metal material for the second time and traded it with the spirit merchant. At that time, the other party took out 3 items, and one of them was a flower with 7 petals. Each petal had a different color, and it was the evolution herb rainbow flower. However, in the end, he did not choose the rainbow flower. Instead, he chose the purple ring with the spatial ability. After all, it was not difficult for him to upgrade his bloodline, and there was no need to consume evolution herbs. Now that he thought about it, he did not regret it. To him, the value of the purple ring was far greater than the rainbow flower. However, this did not mean that the evolution herb's value was lower. It only meant that the evolution herb was not very useful to him. It's starting to smell. This is a sign that it's about to mature. The crystal lotus will mature in at most 1 or 2 days. An elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family was excited. To the royal family, the value of such an evolution herb was almost comparable to a silver-level magic weapon. We actually encountered the evolution herb crystal lotus. We must get it. Another elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family was also excited. Look at the 3 blood fiends around the crystal lotus. Gray was still calm. After all, the evolution herb crystal lotus was not very useful to him. He carefully observed the blood fiends on the hill, and his focus was on the 3 blood fiends closest to the crystal lotus. Soon, he noticed something unusual. Hearing Gray's reminder, Sophia and the other 3 looked at the 3 blood fiends closest to the crystal lotus. One of the blood fiends was a gigantic bird-shaped blood fiend. Its fur was snow-white and smooth, as if it had been combed with a comb. It perched on top of the hill with its wings tucked away. Even so, its body was still a few meters tall, taller than an adult standing up. Its claws were extremely sharp and flashed with a black glow. Its brown eyes were extremely sharp. It was a desolate-level blood fiend, the mystic iceberg. The other blood fiend was on the left side of the crystal lotus. It was a gigantic blood fiend in the shape of a lizard. Its entire body was covered with ice-like, transparent scales. Its limbs and body were extremely thick, and its length was probably as long as 10 meters. This was a desolate-level ice dragon. It was rumored to be a special blood fiend with the bloodline of a dragon. The last blood fiend was on the right side of the crystal lotus. It was also gigantic and was about 8 meters long. It looked like a dog, but its entire body was covered with sharp blood-red thorns. Each of the thorns looked as if they had been soaked in blood, flashing with a bright red color. The desolate-level blood fiend, the bramble dog. Its blood-red thorns could protect its body and shoot out. They had the characteristic of exploding upon contact with a target. It was extremely powerful. Why are these 3 desolate-level blood fiends bigger than other blood fiends of the same species? Looking at the appearance and size of the 3 blood fiends, Sophia and the rest immediately understood what Gray meant. If they were just ordinary desolate-level blood fiends, they would not have paid much attention to them. After all, both Gray and Ubis Violet could unleash the combat strength of a third-stage Desolate-level Blood Fiend. Ordinary Desolate-level Blood Fiends would not be able to do anything to them as long as there were not too many of them. However, these three Blood Fiends were obviously different. They were obviously bigger than other Blood Fiends of the same species. They were obviously not ordinary Desolate-level Blood Fiends. They also noticed that there were a few other Blood Fiends' corpses around the three Blood Fiends. Judging from the wounds on the corpses, they were all killed with absolute strength. Could it be that these three Blood Fiends have consumed the Purification Herb? An elder of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family had a grave expression. They still retained the characteristics of their respective species. They did not evolve into higher-level Blood Fiends. They probably did not consume the entire herb. They only consumed a part of it. Sophia made a conjecture. Their bodies should have undergone a transformation. I just don't know what level their combat strength has reached. Let me test it out. Gray released Stanley Grinton and asked him to head toward the short mountain. He was ready to test the strength of these three Blood Fiends. Roar, Stanley Grinton, who was heading toward the short mountain, immediately attracted the attention of the Blood Fiends near the short mountain. A Blood Fiend with the appearance of a rat, but with two blade-like front limbs that looked like scythes, suddenly pounced towards Stanley Grinton. A leopard Blood Fiend with lightning spots on its body quickly appeared behind Stanley Grinton. Its sharp claws scratched at Stanley Grinton's back. Other than these two Blood Fiends, several other Blood Fiends also pounced. Puff, puff, puff! Stanley Grinton unsheathed his broken saber and slashed out several times. The Blood Fiends that were pouncing towards him were all cleaved into two halves. Fresh blood splattered onto the snowy ground like rain. Their innards and various other organs were scattered all over the ground. Puff, puff, puff! Stanley Grinton was getting closer to the Crystal Lotus. Along the way, Blood Fiends would attack him from time to time. His response was to slash and kill the Blood Fiends with a single slash. He did not even need to slash twice. Finally, he was only a few dozen meters away from the Crystal Lotus. This area was a restricted area. There were only 3 Blood Fiends in this area. They were the Blood Fiends that he suspected to have consumed the evolution herb. Roar! Seeing Stanley Grinton approaching, the 3 Blood Fiends looked at him with hostility. A terrifying aura burst forth from their bodies, and they let out a warning roar. The other Blood Fiends around them retreated one after another. One could imagine the prestige of these 3 Blood Fiends among the Blood Fiends. Chapter 474. Pa! 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 Under Gray's control, Stanley Grinton naturally wouldn't be scared off. He slowly approached the 3 Blood Fiends and the Crystal Lotus. His goal was to test the strength of the 3 Blood Fiends. Of course, if the 3 Blood Fiends were too weak, he wouldn't mind killing them and occupying the position closest to the Crystal Lotus. Oh woo! Stanley Grinton didn't feel threatened and continued to approach. The 3 Blood Fiends were enraged, and at the same time, they attacked Stanley Grinton as if they'd discussed it beforehand. The ice dragon stood up. Its body was exactly 10 meters long, and its back was as thick as a mountain. The scales on its body were as cold as ice, and they were slightly translucent. Its ferocious head opened its giant maw at Stanley Grinton. From its mouth, a stream of white cold air shot out, rolling up a monstrous chill, madly rushing towards Stanley Grinton. The ground was frozen by this terrifying cold air. Whoosh! The ice bird spread its enormous wings, which were more than 10 meters long. With a press of its wings, it flew into the air. Facing Stanley Grinton, it suddenly flapped its huge wings. A cold wind whistled, and large chunks of ice suddenly appeared, attacking Stanley Grinton like meteors. The bramble desolate hound stared at Stanley Grinton with its ghostly green eyes. The blood-red thorns on its body separated from its body, but they did not scatter in all directions. Instead, they floated around the bramble hound. Whoosh! 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 Under its control, the blood-red thorns whistled through the air, turning into sharp, thorny blades dozens of times more powerful than arrows, attacking Stanley Grinton. Whoosh! Under Gray's control, Stanley Glinton abruptly moved to the side a few dozen meters away, avoiding the terrifying cold air that pervaded the air. The cold air spread behind him, and the blood fiends behind him were frozen into ice sculptures one by one. As far as the eye could see, there was a sea of frozen blood fiends behind him. It was like a forest of ice sculptures. Boom, boom, boom. Huge chunks of ice came one after another, covering a wide area and extremely dense. Stanley Grinton couldn't avoid them, and continuously slashed out with his broken sword. Crack, crack, crack. Huge chunks of ice were cut in half by him one after another. The impact of each chunk of ice was very strong, enough to seriously injure a first-stage desolate-level blood fiend. Even with Stanley Grinton's strength, under the attack of so many chunks of ice, he could be hit at any time. At this moment, dozens of blood-red thorny blades joined in, surrounding Stanley Grinton. Knowing that these thorny blades had the ability to explode, Gray hurriedly controlled Stanley Grinton to dodge. However, with both ice and blood-red thorny blades, even Stanley Grinton's strength couldn't completely dodge. Boom! A thorny blade that couldn't dodge in time was cut in half by Stanley Grinton, but in the next moment, the thorny blade exploded and a terrifying shockwave hit Stanley Grinton. Stanley Grinton was pushed back by the shockwave. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Under the control of the mystical ice bird and the thorny hound, the huge ice and blood-red thorny blades chased after Stanley Grinton. Finally, Stanley Grinton couldn't stop them in time, and several blood-red thorny blades hit him. Boom! A terrifying explosion. Although Stanley Grinton wasn't injured due to his strong defense, he was thrown off the hill by the terrifying explosion. He smashed into an unlucky blood fiend, turning it into a meat patty. Gray decisively controlled Stanley Grinton to retreat and return. All three of them are third-stage desolate level. Seeing the battle just now, Gray and the other four, who were watching from afar, became serious. After consuming a portion of the evolution herbs, the three blood fiends had reached third-stage desolate level. Their combat strength was on par with Stanley Grinton and Mubus Violet. The most troublesome thing was that the three blood fiends were working together. Normally, if blood fiends met each other, a fight would be unavoidable due to territorial or racial differences. However, these three blood fiends didn't. Instead, they lived in harmony and fought against the enemy together. Such a situation was extremely rare, but they had encountered it. This is troublesome. There are three third-stage desolate-level blood fiends, and they're working together. Mubus Violet furrowed his brows. Including Stanley Grinton, who was controlled by Gray, they only had two third-stage desolate-level blood fiends. However, there were three third-stage desolate-level blood fiends on the hill, and they were working together. All three blood fiends have reached third-stage desolate level. They probably don't need the entire evolution herb to promote their evolution. Is that why they're working together? Gray guessed uncertainly. What should we do now? One of the elders from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family frowned. I have a forbidden weapon with me. If I use it, I should be able to severely injure or even kill one of the blood fiends. Sophia said, for the safety of the three siblings, the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family had given each of them a forbidden weapon. Forbidden weapons are too precious. It's best not to use them unless it's absolutely necessary. Mubus Violet shook his head. Even though the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family was wealthy, they didn't have many forbidden weapons. After all, the materials used to make forbidden weapons were extremely precious. Moreover, the process of making forbidden weapons would harm a king-level powerhouse. Even though the royal family had many king-level powerhouses, they didn't have many forbidden weapons. If we don't use the forbidden weapons, how can we get it? The five of them were deep in thought, thinking about how to get the crystal lotus from the three third-stage desolate-level blood fiends. With Stanley Grinton's speed, he might be able to snatch the crystal lotus from the three blood fiends. One of the elders from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family said with uncertainty. Stanley Grinton was a king-level powerhouse when he was alive. Although he was dead, he still retained the speed of a king-level powerhouse. His speed was definitely faster than the average third-stage, desolate-level Bloodfiend. Since they couldn't snatch it by force, they could only rely on speed. That's unlikely. I just noticed that the mysterious icebird's speed is also terrifying. It should be no slower than a king-level powerhouse. Another elder from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family shook his head. He wasn't optimistic. Someone's here. Suddenly, the five of them turned serious and looked at the other side of the stone forest. There, someone was heading their way. It seemed that they weren't the only ones who had discovered the evolution herbs here. These people had discovered them as well. It was a team of 10 people. There were 3 people in the lead, a man and a woman. There were 2 elders and a young woman. The young woman was wearing a white battle suit. Her waist was slender, and her legs were long and slender. There was a diamond-shaped ruby between her eyebrows that shone brightly. It's Her Highness Jelenway from the Jewel Kingdom. Seeing this young woman, Gray and the others immediately determined the identity of these 10 people. Sophia asked after the 2 sides had greeted each other, but they were still slightly on guard. Her Highness Jelenway, what are your intentions? You've seen the strength of those 3 blood fiends. Neither of us can snatch the crystal lotus. We can only work together. Jelenway Austin said in a serious tone. Her Highness Jelenway is right. We can only snatch the crystal lotus if we work together. But how do we divide it after we snatch it? Sophia nodded in agreement with Jelenway Austin's suggestion. The 5 of them had already discussed and agreed that they couldn't snatch the crystal lotus with their strength. We'll divide the crystal lotus according to our contribution. In the Jewel Kingdom's team, one of the 2 elders in the lead, the old lady, said, How do we divide the contribution? How do we divide the contribution? Mubus Violet asked. For the crystal lotus, level 3 desolate level blood fiends are the main force. We'll divide the crystal lotus according to the number of level 3 desolate level blood fiends. The man in the lead of the Jewel Kingdom's team said. Gray and the others looked at each other and nodded slightly. This distribution plan was reasonable. It's a fair distribution plan. We agree. How many level 3 desolate level blood fiends are there in your team? Mubus Violet asked. 2 of us. Both of us. The man in the lead pointed at the old lady and said, What a coincidence. We're 2 as well. Both of us. Mubus Violet smiled faintly and pointed at Stanley Grinton, who was standing silently at the side. The Jewel Kingdom's team was surprised. They thought that they would get a bigger share since they had 2 level 3 desolate level blood fiends in their team. They didn't expect Gray's team of 6 to have 2 level 3 desolate level blood fiends as well. They had seen Stanley Grinton's strength. He wasn't hurt under the siege of 3 level 3 desolate level blood fiends. There was no doubt that he was a level 3 desolate level blood fiend. As for Mubus Violet, they hadn't seen her before. However, they didn't doubt her. After all, they were going to fight later. Whether she was a level 3 desolate level blood fiend or not, they would know when she fought. Since we have 2 level 3 desolate level blood fiends, we'll divide the crystal lotus equally after we get it. Jelenway Austin said. Sure. Sophia's voice was pleasant. She nodded with a smile and said, Some of you should have the ability to escape through the earth. You can bring us to the crystal lotus, right? Indeed, some of you have the ability to escape through the earth. However, the 3 blood fiends are very sensitive. We can't get too close. We tried to get close once before, but the 3 blood fiends were alerted immediately. Jelenway Austin said, Oh, whoa. At this moment, a strange beast roar suddenly rang out. All the blood fiends on and around the short mountain became restless. All the blood fiends stared excitedly at the crystal lotus halfway up the mountain. The crystal lotus is about to mature. Gray and the others immediately deduced that the crystal lotus was about to mature. The blood fiends must have sensed it and caused such a commotion. Chapter 475. Whoosh. An old man from the Jewel Kingdom used his Earthmeld ability. Suddenly, a yellowish light spread out and enveloped Gray and the others. Then, Gray and the others saw their bodies slowly sinking into the ground. This was a novel experience. Underground, they did not see complete darkness. Instead, They were surrounded by yellowish light. Under the yellowish light, they could clearly see the soil and rocks underground. When they tried to touch them with their hands, they realized that they were in a different space and time. Their hands could easily pass through the soil and rocks. Under the control of the old man, using the earth meld ability, the yellowish light that enveloped Gray and the others moved quickly towards the crystal lotus. However, they soon realized that they were not the only ones moving underground. There were also some blood fiends with the earth meld ability. They were also moving underground and were moving towards the crystal lotus. Sensing their presence, the blood fiends launched attacks at them. However, these attacks were blocked by the Purple Moon Kingdom's Desolate Blood Warriors, who had the Earth Elemental ability. Instead, the Blood Fiends that launched the attack were killed by the Purple Moon Kingdom's Earth Elemental attacks. Soon, the group was only a few dozen meters away from the Crystal Lotus. This was the closest they could get to the Crystal Lotus. If they got any closer, they would be discovered by the three Blood Fiends. Although they were on the ground, they could clearly see the icy green flower of the crystal lotus through the yellowish light. At this moment, the flower bud of the crystal lotus was slightly open. It looked like a flower that was about to bloom. They could even see the white stamen inside. Outside, the roars of blood fiends could be heard. A large number of blood fiends were charging towards the crystal lotus. They were killing each other nonstop. Blood was everywhere, dyeing the snow red. Some blood fiends were charging towards the three desolate level blood fiends. With a flap of its wings, many blood fiends were smashed to death by the ice. The ice dragon breathed in and out cold air, freezing many blood fiends into ice sculptures. The bramblehound stabbed out with its blood-red thorns. Many blood fiends were blasted into meat paste. Bone fragments splattered everywhere. The three third-level desolate level blood fiends killed the incoming blood fiends with lightning speed, shocking the blood fiends. However, there were more and more blood fiends swarming over. The ones at the front were desolate level blood fiends that were constantly in a commotion. Their gazes were fixed on the crystal lotus. Even though there were three third-level desolate level blood fiends, it was getting harder and harder to intimidate them. While they were underground, Gray and the others were constantly being attacked by the blood fiends. Blood fiends with earth elemental abilities were constantly charging at them. Fortunately, they were all stopped and killed by the earth elemental blood warriors of the Jewel Kingdom. With their abilities, it was not convenient for Gray and the others to fight underground. They felt that all the blood fiends seemed to have gone crazy. Although they couldn't smell anything, they could guess that the crystal lotus was emitting an extremely strong scent, which was why the blood fiends kept attacking. Gray and the others stared intently at the crystal lotus. They were prepared to rush out of the ground and snatch the crystal lotus at any time. It's blooming. Suddenly, under their gazes, the petals of the crystal lotus blossomed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and an even stronger fragrance filled the air. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The three third-level desolate level blood fiends were excited. Their eyes were filled with desire as they shot toward the crystal lotus. Puff, puff, puff. Gray and the others rushed out of the ground. Gray controlled Stanley Grinton to turn into a phantom, blocking the path of the ice dragon and slashing at the ice dragon. Mubus Violet held a long spear that was surrounded by purple flames. He then pierced the spear into the sky. The purple flames turned into a purple blood fiend. It soared into the sky and intercepted the ice bird that was rushing toward the crystal lotus. A large number of meteorites suddenly appeared in front of the third-level desolate level elder of the Jewel Kingdom. They whizzed toward the bramblehound. The third-level desolate level elder of the Jewel Kingdom pounced toward the crystal lotus, while Sophia, Gallenway Austin, Gray, and the others intercepted the other desolate level blood fiends that were rushing toward them. This was the division of labor that had been arranged beforehand. 3 of the 4 third-level desolate level blood warriors would intercept the 3 third-level desolate level blood fiends, while the last person would go and pluck the crystal lotus. Originally, Stanley Grinton was the most suitable person to pluck the crystal lotus. After all, he was the fastest. However, Stanley Grinton could not use the space item. After plucking the crystal lotus, he could not immediately store it in the space item for safekeeping. It could easily be damaged during the battle. After understanding the situation, Gray, Sophia, and the others quietly assigned the task of intercepting one of the third-level Desolate-level Blood Fiends to Stanley Grinton. The 3 third-level Desolate-level Blood Warriors fought against the 3 third-level Desolate-level Blood Fiends. Gray and the others worked together to intercept the other Blood Fiends. The third-level Desolate-level Elder of the Jewel Kingdom was getting closer and closer to the Crystal Lotus. At this moment, whoosh, a golden flame suddenly appeared and turned into a giant golden claw. It suddenly grabbed toward the Elder of the Jewel Kingdom. "Who's there?" The Elder of the Jewel Kingdom was shocked. She waved the battle axe in her hand, and a huge yellow light flew out and blocked the giant golden flame claw. She looked toward the direction of the golden flame. In the direction of the golden flame, there should have been ordinary plants in the ice field. However, the plants suddenly disappeared, and 6 people appeared from within. There were 2 people in the lead. One of them was a handsome young man with golden hair. The young man's golden hair was like burning flames, and his face was as sharp as a knife. He was the second prince of the Flame Kingdom, Niklos Blaze. The other person was an elder with a long spear. The golden flame just now came from this elder. The 6 of them must have mastered some kind of magic weapon that could distort light. They transformed into a cluster of plants and evaded the detection of the third-level Desolate-level Blood Fiends. "Thank you so much." The elder with the long spear laughed and rushed toward the elder of the Jewel Kingdom. He blocked the elder of the Jewel Kingdom while the others rushed toward the Crystal Lotus. Among the 6 of them, only the elder was a third-level Desolate level. It would be difficult for them to seize the Crystal Lotus against the 3 third-level Desolate-level Blood Fiends. However, the appearance of Gray and the others created an opportunity for them by intercepting the 3 third-level Desolate-level Blood Fiends. Oh no! Gray and the others were shocked. They did not expect the Flame Kingdom to be hiding in the dark and create an opportunity for them. Some of them gave up on intercepting the Desolate-level Blood Fiends and turned back to rush toward the Crystal Lotus. Seeing Gray and the others rushing toward the Crystal Lotus, one person from the Flame Kingdom continued to rush toward the Crystal Lotus while the others stayed to intercept Gray and the others. "Gray Fergus!" Niklos Blaze roared. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he rushed toward Gray with a golden long spear in his hand. The golden flame on the long spear turned into a giant claw and slapped toward Gray. Gray held a black giant sword, and a stream of compressed black mist like a sharp blade slashed toward the giant claw. Crack! The black mist Gray slashed out was shattered. The giant claw continued to slash toward Gray and the people around him. Their clothes were torn and tattered as they were sent flying backward. The others were severely injured. Gray was also injured, although it was not serious. This was a second-level Desolate-level attack. It was extremely powerful, even among second-level Desolate-level beasts. It has indeed reached second-level Desolate level. Gray's expression turned solemn. Nikel's Inferno's strength had already reached the peak of the first level of the Desolate level when he was on the battlefield with the Kingdom of Flames. Now that such a long time had passed, he had indeed broken through to the second level of the Desolate level and had walked very far on this path. "You deserve to die." Niklos Blaze's murderous intent was intense. The tip of the long spear was locked on Gray. Originally, after Gray returned from the Jewel Kingdom, the Flame Teeth had already arranged for people to assassinate Gray and were ready to take action. However, at this moment, the conflict between Gray and the Nahum family occurred. Moreover, a third-level Desolate-level expert had appeared beside Gray, causing the Flame Teeth to temporarily give up on the assassination. Although it was not that they did not have third-level Desolate-level experts, the success rate of the assassination was low with the protection of a third-level Desolate-level expert. Moreover, it was easy to alarm Gray and make him hide. Although he was dissatisfied with this, there was nothing he could do. Now that he saw Gray, the murderous intent in his heart rose. He was eager to kill Gray right here and now. In his opinion, the Crystal Lotus was not as important as killing Gray. It was not only because of hatred, but also because of the potential that Gray had shown. The last person who spoke to me like this was Curtis Blaze. It's a pity that he's dead, but I'm still alive. His eyes met Nicholas Blaze's, and Gray smiled without the slightest bit of stage fright. Boom! Gray's words were like igniting a volcano, completely touching Nicholas Blaze's sore spot. Go to hell, he roared. Golden flames wrapped around his spear, as if there was a golden flame snake coiling around the spear. He stabbed his spear at Gray from a distance. A golden flame snake rushed out and attacked Gray. Gray slashed with the black greatsword in his hand, but he could not completely block it. The golden flame snake hit Gray's body. Gray flew backward with some char marks on his body. Bang, bang, bang. The blood fiends that were hit by him again and again were turned into meat paste before they could even scream. Whoosh! Nicholas Blaze's spear was wrapped in flames. He rushed into the group of blood fiends and stabbed his spear at Gray. Clang! The two weapons collided. The black mist wrapped around Gray's long sword dissipated, and he was forced to retreat again. Clang, clang, clang. After several exchanges, Gray was completely at a disadvantage. He was forced to retreat again and again by the huge force from the collision of the weapons. Nicholas Blaze stomped his feet on the ground and stabbed his spear forward. After burning several blood fiends to ashes, he stabbed Gray, who was unable to dodge in time. Puff! A clear burn mark appeared on Gray's chest, and he was sent flying backward. Many blood fiends were smashed into a bloody pulp by the impact. Chapter 476. Whoosh! Holding the black greatsword, Gray's body was covered in blood. The blood came from the blood fiends that he had killed. Although he was also injured, they were just burns and no blood flowed out. Looking at Nicholas Blaze, who was charging at him again, his eyes were solemn. Nicholas Blaze was definitely a formidable opponent for Stanley Grinton, who was busy intercepting the third-level Desolate-level blood fiends and could not get any support. Nicholas Blaze was superior to him in many aspects. In terms of combat skills, Nicholas Blaze was not inferior to Gray. In fact, he was even better than him. As the most talented descendant of the Flame Kingdom's royal family, Nicholas Blaze was not only talented in combat, but he also spent more time polishing his combat skills than Gray. After all, Nicholas Blaze was older than Gray. In terms of the power of his blood fiends, Gray barely reached the second level of the Desolate level because of his wind-type bloodline. Nicholas Blaze, on the other hand, had not only reached the second level of the Desolate level, but was also one of the stronger ones. In terms of speed and strength, although Gray had reached the first level of the Desolate level through the King Beast bloodline, Nicholas Blaze himself had reached the second level of the Desolate level, so he was still stronger than Gray. The only thing that Gray surpassed Nicholas Blaze was his powerful defense, which was difficult for even the second level of the Desolate level to damage. It was also because of this defense that he had the strength to fight Nicholas Blaze. Without this defense, he would have been dead by now. From this point, it was not difficult to see that when he swallowed the blood, he had made the right choice in choosing the King Beast blood. At that time, if he had chosen the Storm Falcon, which was a Wind-type King-level blood fiend, his combat strength would have been comparable to Nicholas Blaze's. However, due to the disparity in other aspects, he still might not have been Nicholas Blaze's opponent, and would have been injured. Without that powerful defense, the consequences of being injured could be imagined. Whoosh! Nicholas Blaze rushed over, leaving behind charred blood fiend corpses along the way. The golden flames on his spear emitted a terrifying and dangerous aura. Swish! 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 Black mist appeared around Gray and turned into more than 10 giant black snakes that attacked Nicholas Blaze from different directions. Even though he had a strong defense and was hard to kill, Gray was not someone who would passively take a beating. Since the power of the blood fiends was not as strong as the other parties, he might as well split them into more than 10 and attack the other party from all directions. This way, the other party would not be able to deal with them. Whoosh! Nicholas Blaze's Desolation Level 2 burst forth with his speed. His figure flashed left and right, dodging the black fog. Behind him, a series of mournful cries of blood fiends could be heard. Some of the unlucky blood fiends were melted by the black mist, leaving behind only the toughest bones in their bodies. Swish, swish, swish. Although Nicholas Blaze had dodged the black fog, he couldn't help but stop in his tracks as he approached Gray. It was obvious that Gray's strategy of using numbers to launch a surprise attack was effective. And at this time, more than 10 black fog rushed out from Gray and spread out, attacking Nicholas Blaze. Bang! After dodging continuously, Nicholas Blaze was finally forced into an unavoidable situation. A black fog brushed past his arm. Chi! A scratch appeared on Nicholas Blaze's arm, and traces of blood seeped out. Of course, that was all. After all, he was level 2 desolation level. Even if he didn't cultivate a defensive blood technique, he was still able to resist the black fog, which had weakened after it spread out. Looking at the scratch on his arm, Nicholas Blaze snorted coldly. Faced with more than 10 black fog attacks, he no longer dodged. Instead, he touched the ground with his spear as if he had given up on defending. Of course, his opponent did not give up on defending. The moment his spear touched the ground, balls of golden flames suddenly appeared around his body. Then, they whistled as they welcomed the dozen or so streaks of black mist. Evidently, his opponent's golden flames also had an area of effect attack. Boom, boom, boom. Under the dense golden flames, more than 10 black fog attacks were shattered. Some of the golden flames even attacked Gray, hitting Gray's body and forcing Gray to retreat. However, these golden flames were scattered, so their power was naturally greatly reduced. Gray was able to withstand them without any damage. Boom, boom, boom. Gray and Nicholas Blaze exchanged blows. Blood Fiend abilities blossomed like fireworks among the Blood Fiends. From time to time, a Blood Fiend would be affected and explode. Whoosh! Nicholas Blaze broke through the black fog and approached Gray. His spear, wrapped in black flames, pierced towards Gray. Clang! Gray's sword, wrapped in black fog, blocked the spear and was forced to retreat. Clang, clang, clang. The weapons collided several times in a row, and the spear wrapped in golden flames knocked away the sword in Gray's hand. The spear went straight for Gray's throat. Bang! Gray's body leaned slightly to the side, avoiding his throat. The spear pierced his shoulder, causing a burn mark to appear on his shoulder. He was sent flying backwards. Clang, clang, clang. Nicholas Blaze and Gray fought among the Blood Fiends, stirring up a perilous situation among the thousands of Blood Fiends. The battle between the two was the best embodiment of offense and defense. One had a powerful attack and was unstoppable, while the other had a powerful defense and was indestructible. In just a short while, a conservative estimate of the number of Blood Fiends that had died in the battle between the two of them was at least 100. He's gotten stronger again. Looking at Gray fighting with Nicholas Blaze in the distance, Glenwy Austin's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Obviously, compared to the time during the Three Kingdoms exchange, Gray's strength had increased again. He was now able to contend against a second-level Desolate Grade. Now, his physical defense had far surpassed hers. The one with the strongest defense among the younger generation was no longer her, but him. Whoosh! The chaotic battle continued. The Purple Moon Kingdom and the Jewel Kingdom's Desolate Grade Blood Fiends and the Flame Kingdom's Desolate Grade Blood Fiends could not quickly break through the blockade. They could only see the people from the Flame Kingdom rushing towards the Crystal Lotus. This was an old man with a slightly skinny appearance and dark skin. His eyes were filled with passion as he looked at the Crystal Lotus that was close at hand. He could already imagine how the Flame Kingdom would reward him after he obtained the Crystal Lotus for the Flame Kingdom. With enough cultivation resources, it would not be impossible for him to reach the second level or even the third level of Desolate Grade. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the Crystal Lotus. His hand had already touched the slightly cold petals of the Crystal Lotus. Suddenly, at this moment, a blue light flickered and disappeared. Then he was shocked, and angry to find that the Crystal Lotus that he had touched had disappeared and landed in the hands of a young woman not far away. She had quickly kept it in her rune space bag. Hand it over. The fragrance of the crystal lotus still lingered on his hand. He roared angrily and was so angry that he went crazy. A blue lightning struck towards the young woman. But to his surprise, the young woman was once again covered in blue light and quickly disappeared. The blue lightning struck the ground and shattered the earth, but it did not hurt her at all. The young woman was naturally Sophia. At this time, only her speed could break through the blockade and obtain the crystal lotus. Retreat. After shouting to everyone, Sophia quickly went down the mountain. We got it. Let's retreat. The people from the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Jewel Kingdom were delighted. They all gave up on their respective targets and quickly went down the mountain. Gray looked at Nicholas Blaze with a cold smile and summoned Stanley Gritton. He had already killed one Prince of Flames, so he did not mind killing another. After all, there was no difference between killing one or two princes. If the Flame Kingdom wanted to assassinate him, they would still do so. Not good. The old man who was fighting the old woman saw Stanley Gritton rushing towards Nicholas Blaze and knew that things were not good. He left the old woman and rushed towards Nicholas Blaze. He seemed to have some kind of special magic weapon on him. His body was covered in golden light, and his speed became extremely fast. He actually surpassed Stanley Gritton and was the first to arrive in front of Nicholas Blaze. Bringing Nicholas Inferno with him, he arrived at the side of several other people from the Kingdom of Flames and quickly left with them. Stay! The people from the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Jewel Kingdom were not happy. They retreated down the mountain and tried to stop him. One of the old men from the Flame Kingdom was attacked and was immediately injured and sent flying. He was completely killed by the follow-up attacks. The old man from the Flame Kingdom could only give up after a glance. He turned into a ball of golden light and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Swoosh! 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 Gray and the others quickly left the short mountain. However, the three desolate level blood fiends who had lost the crystal lotus were completely enraged. They targeted Gray and the others and attacked them from behind. Although the three blood fiends were intelligent, they did not know how the crystal lotus disappeared and why they could not even smell its fragrance. However, they clearly bore a grudge against this group of people who had obstructed them. Gray and the others were naturally not afraid of the three desolate level blood fiends. There were 4 desolate level blood fiends in their group. Moreover, without the suppression of the level 3 desolate level blood fiends from the Flame Kingdom, they could all attack. 4 third-level desolate level blood beasts working together against 3 third-level desolate level blood beasts had an obvious advantage. After fighting for more than 10 minutes, the 3 third-level desolate level blood beasts were all injured and had no choice but to escape unwillingly. The group left the short mountain and only stopped when they were dozens of miles away from it and confirmed that there were no other dangers in the surroundings. Sophia took out the crystal lotus from her rune space bag. There were a total of 12 icy green leaves, and the stamen was white. A rich fragrance filled the air, and everyone who smelled it felt refreshed. Chapter 477. It smells so good. Everyone stared at the crystal lotus with fervent gazes. This was the evolutionary herb that king-level experts yearned for. If one observed carefully, one would notice that both sides were standing with caution and vigilance. They were both afraid that the other side would use underhanded means to obtain the evolutionary herb. Ka! Sophia took out a dagger and slashed it lightly. The crystal lotus was immediately cut in half. Sophia then handed one half to Glenwy Austin. The latter took the crystal lotus and took a few steps back. She then took out a carved crystal box and stored the crystal lotus inside. Although evolutionary herbs like the crystal lotus could not be preserved for long even if stored in a spatial item, sealed containers like the crystal box could still slow down the loss of the herb's efficacy to a certain extent. After giving half of the crystal lotus to Glenwy Austin, Sophia did not stop there. With another slash of the dagger, the remaining half of the crystal lotus was cut in half again. She then handed one half to Gray. Mubas Violet and the other 2 elders of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family looked extremely distressed. However, They did not stop her. This was what Gray deserved. In fact, there were a total of 3 factions in this cooperation. The royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom, the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom, and Gray. Gray, who had the combat strength of a 3rd grade Desolate grade, was obviously qualified to receive one of the portions. He has a share too. Seeing Sophia's distribution, the people of the Jewel Kingdom were slightly surprised. However, when they glanced at Stanley Grinton, who was standing silently behind Gray, they understood. Stanley Grinton should be on the same side as Gray. That was why Gray could get a share of the Crystal Lotus. Seeing the 1/4 portion of the Crystal Lotus being handed over, Gray did not reach out to take it. Instead, he shook his head slightly. This thing is not very useful to me. Can I exchange it for 10 Purple Moon Potions with the royal family? Right now, he didn't need to upgrade his blood meridians. After all, he already had many King-class blood meridians. Once he reached the King class, he would need to upgrade his blood meridians. But the Crystal Lotus couldn't be stored for long. He couldn't wait until he reached the King class to consume it. Therefore, the Crystal Lotus was not very useful to him. It was not as useful as the Purple Moon Potion that could increase his strength. Sure, but I can only give it to you after we return to the kingdom. Sophia smiled faintly and agreed. The Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family would definitely benefit from the exchange of 10 Purple Moon Potions for 1/4 of the evolution herbs. Naturally, there was no reason for them to refuse. Of course, she also understood that Gray was doing this for the sake of the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Otherwise, Gray would not be trading with the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom, but the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom. She believed that the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom would definitely offer a higher price. After the cooperation ended, Gray's group of 5 and Glenwy Austin's group of 10 did not move together. Instead, they split up and chose a direction to continue exploring the endless ice fields. One evolution herb was obviously not the cause of the beast tide in the endless ice fields. There must be a bigger surprise waiting for them in the depths of the endless ice fields. Of course, it could also be a scare. Something that could trigger a beast tide might be a disaster for them. As they continued to venture deeper, the ground before Gray's group was no longer covered in thick snow. Instead, it was ice that had not melted for thousands of years. In the ice, all kinds of corpses could be seen from time to time. Some of them were badly damaged and had probably been eaten. There were also some that were completely preserved in the ice. Even after hundreds or thousands of years, there was still no sign of decay. Be careful. We have already entered the depths of the endless ice fields. It's very likely that we will encounter a King-class blood fiend. After entering this place, Gray's group of 5 became very careful. Their bodies were tense, and their minds were highly focused. They were constantly on guard against any unforeseen circumstances. Gray even let out Stanley Grinton. With his King-class vision and hearing, he could detect danger in advance. It was certain that there were King-class blood fiends in the depths of the endless ice fields. It was rumored that there were even magic light-class blood fiends in the depths of the endless ice fields. This is the skeleton of a King-class blood fiend. In an ice mountain, Gray's group of 5 discovered a huge skeleton. This skeleton was 15 meters long. Its bones were completely jade-like, as if they were polished from exquisite jade. There was a faint aura coming from the skeleton. The 5 of them could not help but feel a sense of oppression. This was obviously the skeleton of a King-class blood fiend. After melting the ice, Mubus Violet put away the skeleton of the King-class blood fiend. The skeleton of a King-class blood fiend was extremely hard. It was an excellent material to refine magic weapons. The 5 of them continued their journey. The sky was completely covered by clouds, and not a trace of sunlight could be seen. Whoosh! Suddenly, a terrifying whistling sound was heard. It was getting closer and closer. Hi! Gray's group of 5 changed their expressions. They found a hollow in the ice mountain and hid inside. The whistling sound was the sound of the air being torn apart. Just by listening to the sound, they could guess that something powerful was coming their way. Sure enough, not long after they hid in the hollow, the figure of a huge creature appeared. It was a huge bird beast. Its wingspan reached an astonishing 20 meters. It covered a large area of the sky. Wherever it passed, the light on the ground suddenly dimmed. Its body was covered with black hair. There were a few tufts of golden hair on its head, forming a natural crown. Whoosh! It quickly flew past the area where Gray's group was. In its huge claws was a giant beast that was close to 10 meters long. Its sharp claws were deeply embedded in the giant beast's body. Blood dripped from the giant beast's body. There was a faint trace of struggle. It did not seem to be completely dead. King-class Blood Fiend Bird King. After a while, Gray's group of 5 walked out of their hiding place. They looked solemnly in the direction that the black giant bird had left. King-class Blood Fiend Bird King was a king-class blood fiend with the ability to control shadows. It was a nocturnal bird-type blood fiend. With the ability to control shadows, it was extremely powerful in the dark. Few king-class blood fiends were a match for it. King-class blood fiend Bird King usually travels at night. It's unusual for it to travel during the day. Mubs Violet looked puzzled. It's hunting, and I don't think it's for itself. I'm afraid it's looking for food for its baby. Sophia guessed, thinking of the giant beast in the king-class blood fiend Bird King's claws. Baby. Gray's and the others' eyes lit up. One could imagine the value of a king-class blood fiend Bird King's baby. If they could steal the baby while the king-class blood fiend Bird King was out looking for food, it would give birth to a king-class blood fiend Bird King in a few decades. Moreover, it would be a king-class blood fiend Bird King that had few opponents in the dark. Gray and the 3 elders of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family couldn't help but be moved. However, in the next moment, Sophia's words were like a splash of cold water that splashed on Gray and the others. This type of blood fiend Bird King usually lives together with both sexes. Even if it goes out to hunt, one of them will stay behind to look after the baby. Hearing this, Gray and the 3 elders from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family immediately dismissed the idea of stealing the baby. What kind of joke was this? Snatching a blood cub from a king-level blood fiend, or even 2 king-level blood fiends, was no different from courting death. Even if it was daytime, it would not work. Although the king-class blood fiend Bird King was not as strong as it was at night, it was still a king-class blood fiend Bird King. They had no chance of winning, even if they had 2 desolate-level blood fiends Bird King. The gap between a desolate-level blood fiend Bird King and a desolate-level blood fiend Bird King was not something that could be made up for with numbers. The 5 of them continued their journey. After traveling for more than 100 miles, they did not encounter any more king-class blood fiends. Obviously, even in the depths of the endless ice field, king-class blood fiends were not common. Fortunately, this was the case. Otherwise, a team of Gray's level would not dare to explore further. It was close to evening. Gray and the others were ready to set up their tents and rest. There's a cave here. On the side of an ice mountain, Gray accidentally discovered a cave that was about 2 meters tall. Let's stay in this cave tonight. It's not easy for the fire to leak out. At night, the bonfire could easily attract blood fiends. If it was before, they would not have cared. With their strength, even a desolate-level blood fiend would not be enough. However, after encountering a king-class blood fiend today, they became alert. In the depths of the endless ice field, there were blood fiends that could pose a threat to them. There shouldn't be any blood fiends inside. After checking the cave entrance and confirming that there were no footprints of blood fiends, Gray and the others took out their portable rune lamps and walked into the cave. The passage in the cave was slightly curved. Gray and the others were satisfied with this. If they were in the innermost part of the cave, the fire would not be able to leak out. After going in for about 100 meters, the area in front of them suddenly widened. A space about 1 to 200 square meters in width appeared in front of the 5 of them. Someone's here. Suddenly, the 5 of them looked warily at the innermost part of the cave, near the wall. There was a bed made of stone slabs. A person was sitting on the bed. He's already dead. Gray took a closer look and could not help but shake his head. Through his infrared perception, he did not detect the body temperature of a normal person. Obviously, this was a dead person. The 5 of them stepped forward and used their rune lamps to illuminate the area. This was an old man with a withered face and a bald head. However, Gray and the others were surprised to find that there were no fatal injuries on his body. He died of old age at the end of his lifespan. While Gray was still puzzled, Mubus Violet sighed softly. There was a trace of desolation in his voice as he spoke. Died of old age. Gray was stunned at first, but he quickly understood. It was said that when some people reached the end of their lifespan, they would enter various danger zones in search of opportunities. Some people would obtain precious magic herbs that could extend their lifespan, and some would become king rank experts. However, many more people would die in danger zones. The old man in front of them should be such a person. Mubus Violet sighed because he thought of himself. Given his age, if he could not break through, he would not have many years left to live. Perhaps he would choose the same path as this dead old man. After searching the old man's body, other than a ruined space bag, they did not find anything of value. He should have left it to his family's descendants before entering the danger zone. Without disturbing the corpse, Gray's group of 5 rested in this space for a night before leaving and continuing their journey. At noon, Gray and the others prepared to take a break. Rumble. Suddenly, the sound of a terrifying battle could be heard. Gray and the others hesitated for a moment before deciding to sneak over to take a look. After a while, they saw the 2 sides of the battle. 6 people were being chased by a terrifying giant beast. This terrifying beast was more than 10 meters long and covered in white fur. It exuded a terrifying aura. It was a king-rank blood beast, the polar bear. It's His Highness Francis and the others. Seeing these 6 people, especially the young man with purple hair among the 6, Gray and the others immediately showed worry. The team that was being chased was the team of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, Francis' team. Chapter 478. On the icy plains, Francis and the others were retreating from the polar bear, a king-level blood beast. Whoosh! The polar bear, which was more than 10 meters tall, opened its mouth, and a terrifying chill spread out like a wave, rolling and surging towards Francis and the others. In Francis's team, an old man wielding an exquisite black sword slashed out with an extremely dignified expression. Under his sword, raging flames covered the sky and earth. They were also like waves, but they were purple in color. Along the way, the ice on the icy plains that had not melted for thousands of years melted and evaporated. TSK. The distinctly colored white, cold air collided with the purple flames. White and purple mixed at the point of collision. The white, cold air and the purple flames annihilated each other. Finally, accompanied by a rumbling sound, both of them exploded. The terrifying shock waves swept out in all directions, and the shattered ice on the ground sputtered like cannonballs. Francis's group of 5, including the old man with the black longsword, couldn't help but be shaken back, and the places that were scraped by the ice fragments had clear bloodstains. The polar bear, on the other hand, did not move at all. Its huge body easily withstood the terrifying shockwave as it chased after Francis and the others. Silver-grade magical weapon. Gray's gaze fell on the black longsword in the elder's hand. The elder was obviously not a king-level fighter. The only reason he was able to block the attack of the polar bear was because of the black longsword in his hand. This was obviously a silver-ranked magical weapon. It was this weapon's amplification of the Blood Fiend's abilities that allowed the old man to barely block the polar bear's attack. This is bad. Gray judged that although the elder was able to use a silver-grade magical weapon to temporarily match a king-level fighter, there was still a huge gap between him and a king-level fighter. Moreover, even if the elder was a level 3 desolate-grade being, his blood energy was not enough to power a silver-grade magical weapon for a long time. Once his blood energy was exhausted, Francis and the others would probably die. Your Highness Sophia, His Highness Francis, and the others are in a bad situation. Other than forbidden weapons, do you have any silver-grade magical weapons on you? Mubus Violet and the other 2 elders of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family looked at Sophia with hopeful eyes. If I have 2 silver-level magic weapons, I might be able to defeat this king-level blood fiend. No. Sophia smiled bitterly and shook her head. Other than Big Brother, Big Sister, and I don't have any silver-ranked magic weapons. Although the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom had plenty of silver-level magical weapons, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom also had a huge demand for silver-level magical weapons. It was necessary for every king-class elite to be equipped with a silver-grade mana weapon. This was the only way to keep their combat power at its peak. They would not be at a disadvantage or even die because their weapons were not as good as the king-class elites. This was something that could not be omitted. After each king-tier powerhouse was equipped with a silver-grade magic weapon, there were not many left. In addition, silver-level magical weapons would also be damaged due to time and battles. Hence, Francis was the only one among the three siblings who had a silver-level magical weapon. What should we do? The three elders of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family were anxious. If they did not have any silver-grade magical weapons, they would not be able to help. Moreover, they might even get themselves into trouble. I'll let Stanley Grinton try and see if he can block it, Gray said. Based on his estimation, Stanley Grinton should be able to stop the polar bear, but he wasn't too sure about it. Whoosh! Stanley Grinton suddenly dashed out like a phantom toward the polar bear. In a few seconds, Stanley Grinton was already close to the polar bear. As a former king-class elite, Stanley Grinton's speed was extremely fast. He was even faster than the polar bear. Although the polar bear was also a king-class elite, it was obviously not good at speed. If it was a king-class blood fiend that was good at speed, Francis and the rest might not be able to last until they encountered Gray and the rest. Roar! Sensing that there were humans near it, the polar bear roared angrily and temporarily let go of Francis and the rest. It turned around, and its gigantic paw covered the sky as it slammed towards Stanley Grinton. Whoosh! Stanley Grinton pulled out his broken sword and met the bear's attack head-on. Slash! The broken sword left a shallow mark on the bear's paw and could not move an inch further. On the other hand, Stanley Grinton was pushed back by the huge force from the broken sword. Stanley Grinton's strength was naturally king-class, but it was only average. On the other hand, the polar bear was a king-class blood fiend that specialized in strength. Comparing the two, the polar bear had the upper hand. Roar! After pushing Stanley Grinton back with one paw, the polar bear chased after him and slammed its other paw down, intending to smash Stanley Grinton into meat paste. The terrifying giant paw brought along a terrifying roar. No one doubted the power of this paw. Boom! The icy ground suddenly cracked, spreading cracks that were hundreds of meters long. Shattered ice splattered everywhere, but Stanley Grinton's figure was not under the giant paw. Relying on his speed, he dodged the giant paw before it slammed down. Swoosh! Stanley Grinton appeared behind the polar bear and slashed his sword at its back. Bang! The polar ice bear was sent flying by his saber. Your Highness, you all retreat first. I will go and assist him. The sudden appearance of Stanley Grinton made Francis and the rest happy. In Francis's team, the elder holding the black magic sword immediately said, "No need, let's retreat quickly." Francis stopped him and did not explain further. He led the few of them and rushed in the direction that Stanley Grinton had come from. He naturally understood Stanley Grinton's situation very well. After all, the mask on Stanley Grinton's face was given by him. The other party was not alive. It was merely the corpse of a king-level expert. Naturally, it could be abandoned. As for the losses caused to Gray, he naturally had a way to make up for it. Now that the king-level experts of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family were also in the endless ice field, they could easily ask the king-level experts of the royal family to kill a king-level blood fiend as compensation for Gray. Over here, under the beckoning of Gray's team, Francis's team of 6 quickly met up with Gray's team. After meeting up, both sides sighed endlessly, especially Francis's team. They looked as if they had just survived a disaster. After being chased by the king-level blood fiend, the polar bear, they almost thought that they were going to die. They did not expect to be able to escape in the end. At the thought of this, everyone could not help but look in the direction of the battle between Stanley Grinton and the polar bear. Stanley Grinton relied on his speed to deal with the polar bear. Although they were only shallow scratches, it was enough to make the polar bear extremely angry. It opened its huge mouth and spat out a white, chilly air. Stanley Grinton, who was closest to it, could not dodge in time and was swept away by the chilly air. Under this terrifying chilly air, Stanley Grinton was immediately turned into an ice sculpture. This was not the end. Just as Stanley Grinton was frozen into an ice sculpture, the polar bear's huge paw suddenly slapped at Stanley Grinton, who had turned into an ice sculpture. Bang! Stanley Grinton was sent flying like a cannonball. He flew for more than 100 meters and crashed into an ice mountain. After crashing deeply into the ice mountain, he finally came to a stop. Not good. The people in the same team as Francis could not help but feel worried for Stanley Grinton. Although Stanley Grinton was fast, they could still tell that Stanley Grinton was not a king-level blood fiend. Now that they saw Stanley Grinton being attacked by the polar bear's chilly air and being hit by the polar bear's paw, they could not help but feel worried. Francis looked at Gray and said solemnly, "Gray, thank you so much this time. After we meet up with the royal family, I will ask them to kill a king-level blood fiend as compensation for you. It might not be necessary." Gray shook his head slightly and looked at the ice mountain that Stanley Grinton had crashed into. His connection with Stanley Grinton had not been severed. Boom! Indeed, in the next moment, shattered ice flew everywhere, and Stanley Grinton's figure rushed out. There were not many injuries on his body. After metallization, his defense was definitely one of the strongest among the Tier 1 king-level blood fiends. It was not something that could be easily destroyed. What a strong defense! Seeing that Stanley Grinton was barely injured, Francis' team was shocked. Under the attack of a king-level blood fiend, he was barely injured. This kind of defense was terrifyingly strong. What kind of blood technique did he practice? Francis looked at the silver metallic luster on Stanley Grinton's body in surprise. He was deep in thought. He knew that Gray had metallization ability. Now that Stanley Grinton had metallized as well, it was obvious that Gray's metallization ability had also affected Stanley Grinton's body. Boom, boom. Under the attack of the berserk polar bear, Stanley Grinton was sent flying again and again. However, he stood up again and again. Some of the ice mountains around him even collapsed. Let's retreat further. This place is not safe. After confirming that Stanley Grinton was not seriously injured and had a clearer understanding of Stanley Grinton's metallization defense, Gray suggested, "Okay, everyone quickly retreated." After they were a few miles away, they stopped. Even though they were so far away, they could still hear the commotion coming from the direction where the polar bear and Stanley Grinton were fighting. One could imagine how intense the battle was. After a long time, the battle ended. Just when everyone thought that Stanley Grinton had been killed, Stanley Grinton's figure suddenly appeared. Although his clothes were tattered and his body was full of scratches, he was obviously not seriously injured. Chapter 479. He actually escaped from a king-level blood fiend. Those who didn't know Stanley Grinton's identity were amazed by Stanley Grinton's strength. He actually managed to escape from a king-level blood fiend. If it were them, they would be able to brag about it for the rest of their lives. The affinity physique is really terrifying. Those who knew Stanley Grinton's identity, such as Francis and Sophia, were amazed by Gray's affinity physique. He was able to combine the ability to control corpses and metallize to form a hybrid ability, displaying a terrifying combat power that far exceeded both abilities. Your Highness Francis, how did you provoke the polar bear? After confirming that they had escaped from the polar bear's pursuit, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. An elder from the royal family in Gray's team asked doubtfully, "We were ambushed." At the mention of this matter, Francis's face was slightly gloomy. The other members of Francis' team also had ugly expressions. If it weren't for someone who had saved them this time, they would have most likely died. This was an extremely bad fall. We've been plotted against. Who did it? Mubus Violet asked angrily. It was the Flame Kingdom. An elder from Francis' team said in a low voice. To be precise, it was Niklos Blaze. We encountered them 2 days ago and fought them. However, neither side gained the upper hand. Francis was injured, but fortunately, it wasn't too serious. He said with a slightly gloomy face. While we were on our way today, they suddenly rushed towards us with the polar bear. They had a special magic weapon that allowed them to move extremely fast. They managed to escape, but we were targeted by the polar bear. It's them. Gray and Sophia couldn't help but look at each other. A few days ago, Niklos, Blaze, and a few others suddenly attacked and almost took the Crystal Lotus. After that battle, they didn't appear again. After that battle, they must have felt that they were no match for them and the Jewel Kingdom's team, so they decisively gave up on attacking them. After that, they encountered Francis' team in the process of going deeper into the ice field. After a battle, they couldn't do anything about Francis' team and began to plot against them. Both sides rested for a while before resuming their journey. Niklos Blaze is probably still hiding in the dark, spying on us. Moreover, the ice field is too dangerous. It's best for both teams to move together. In the end, after some discussion, Gray's team of 5 and Francis' team of 6 decided to work together. Of the two teams, one had Stanley Grinton, someone who could escape from a king-level blood fiend, and the other team had silver-ranked magic weapons that could temporarily display a king-level combat power. Together, their combat power would be greatly enhanced. In the ice field, where the degree of danger was obviously higher than the outside, it was obviously very necessary. On top of an iceberg not far from them, there was a cluster of ice field plants that could be seen everywhere. A blood fiend passed by, but it didn't notice anything unusual and walked slowly into the distance. But in fact, it wasn't a cluster of ice field plants. It was just a light shadow without a physical body. Within the light shadow, Niklos Blaze's team of 5 from the Flame Kingdom was looking coldly at Gray's team, who had just escaped from the danger of the polar ice beast. What a pity! They actually managed to escape. An old man from the Flame Kingdom looked regretful. Who is that person wearing a silver mask? His strength is terrifying. He actually managed to escape from the polar ice beast. Another old man from the Flame Kingdom had a fearful expression. Moreover, this person's fighting style is very strange. He actually fought the polar ice beast in close combat. I didn't see him using any elemental attack at all. Could it be that he's trained in the physical type of blood fiend ability? The old man from the Flame Kingdom in front of them was puzzled. The silver glow on his body should be caused by metallization. He's probably trained in a type of metallization ability. Although he lost his elemental attack, he has a strong physical body. The old man from the Flame Kingdom guessed. What should we do next? After they split up, should we secretly follow Francis' team and wait for an opportunity to lure the polar ice beast? Someone asked. No need. Niklos Blaze's cold gaze swept across the two teams from the Purple Moon Kingdom and finally landed on Gray. They probably won't split up. There's someone in the team who can restrain the polar ice beast. Luring the polar ice beast won't work on them. Let's continue to go deeper into the endless ice field. Soon, the 5-man team silently disappeared from the ice mountains. From the beginning to the end, Gray, Francis, and the rest did not discover them. With the special magic weapons, if they did not want to be discovered, even a polar ice beast would have a hard time discovering them. 2 days later, Gray's team of 11 crossed one ice mountain after another and encountered powerful blood fiends one after another. There were polar ice beasts that were in the growth stage. There were polar ice beasts that had swallowed some evolution herbs. They even brushed past a polar ice beast that had gone out to hunt for food. The depths of the endless ice field were much more dangerous than the periphery. However, along with the danger, the harvest was also extremely great. Along the way, almost everyone picked a few precious magic herbs, many of which were priceless. The temperature of the air became lower and lower. A cup of boiling water would turn into ice in midair. Fortunately, everyone present was a powerful blood warrior with an extremely strong physique. They had a strong resistance to the cold air and were not affected by it. Look, that's... Someone looked up at the sky and immediately exclaimed. Everyone looked up and could not help but be shocked. There was a huge crack in the sky in the distance. It was a huge and deep crack that extended for thousands of miles. In the middle, the widest part was more than 100 miles wide. Why is there a crack in the sky? What is that crack? Everyone stared blankly at the huge crack in the sky. There should have been nothing in the empty sky, but such a huge crack had appeared. The inside of the crack was pitch black and extremely deep. Around the crack, there were many small cracks, extending from a few miles to a few hundred meters, as if countless tentacles were growing out of them. Could that be a space crack? Gray muttered with a shocked expression on his face. A crack in the empty sky. The only possibility he could think of was a space crack. Could it be that the beast tide in the depths of the endless ice field was caused by this crack? Many people thought of the beast tide that broke out not long ago and came to a realization. Although it had not been confirmed, it was almost certain that this crack was the cause of the beast tide. When this crack suddenly appeared and extended for thousands of miles, it immediately alarmed all the blood fiends within 1,000 miles of the endless ice field. That was why the beast tide that had not been seen in hundreds of years happened. There seems to be something in the crack. Someone with sharp eyes stared at the widest part of the crack and exclaimed. In the huge crack, a vague silhouette could be seen. Different from the deep black of the crack, this silhouette had a slight tinge of green. Let's get closer. Gray and the others ran wildly toward the center of the crack. After running for a full day, the center of the crack became clear. It was a huge, inverted island hanging upside down in the sky. Part of the island was opposite to the ground, as if it would fall at any time. However, it was suspended in the crack and did not fall. The vegetation on the island was dense, becoming the only patch of green in the deep crack. They could vaguely see that there were mountains, lakes, rivers, and a huge steeple on the island. A huge steeple built with white building materials stood tall. It was taller than the mountain and stood in the middle of the island, emitting a bright white light. An island suspended in the sky. Whether it was Gray, Sophia, or Francis, everyone who saw this scene could not help but be stunned. It was already surprising enough that there was a crack in the sky that stretched for thousands of miles. However, there was actually an inverted island floating in the middle of this crack. What kind of power prevented it from falling from the sky? Was it the power of the runic matrices? But what kind of runic matrices could make an island float? This shouldn't be a relic from the Empire era. After a long time, Francis said with a grave expression, in the library of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, there were many documents from the Empire era. However, even in these documents, there was no relevant description. He felt that even the powerful empire of the past would not be able to do such a thing, creating a spatial crack that extended for thousands of miles and allowing an island to float in the middle of the spatial crack without falling. This was definitely something created by a force more powerful than the Empire. A spatial crack that extended for thousands of miles. An island suspended in a spatial crack? Not long after Gray and the others discovered the spatial crack and the island, teams that were exploring the depths of the endless ice field also discovered the spatial crack and the island. They couldn't help but be shocked by this discovery. Then, one after another, they rushed towards the island from all directions. Perhaps there would be something falling from the island. In the process of rushing towards the same destination, the people of the Purple Moon Kingdom, Scarlet Kingdom, and Jewel Kingdom would inevitably bump into the people of the Flame Kingdom. There had already been friction before, and now there were even more frequent battles. Some people were injured, and some people died. Whether it was the Purple Moon Kingdom, Scarlet Kingdom, Jewel Kingdom, or Flame Kingdom, there were casualties. The casualties once again widened the hatred between the two sides. Suddenly, the depths of the ice field completely turned into a battlefield. There were even collisions between king-level forces. Those were the collisions between two sides wielding silver-level magic weapons. Chapter 480. Just as the people from the four great kingdoms were rushing towards the corresponding area of the island, the area directly below the island was already in ruins. It was filled with terrifying scars. On this broken piece of land, more than 20 king-level powerhouses were divided into two sides, facing each other. One side was the Purple Moon Kingdom, the Scarlet Kingdom, and the Jewel Kingdom. The other side was the Flame Kingdom. Before this, the two sides had already clashed, and the broken piece of land under their feet was the result of their collision. Both sides looked at the island in the sky and frowned without saying a word. They had discovered the crack in the island for quite some time. During this time, they had tried all kinds of methods to enter the crack and get close to the island, but none of them succeeded. Some of them were even injured. If they hadn't reacted quickly enough, they would have died there. From time to time, cracks ranging from tens of meters to hundreds of meters would appear and disappear around the huge crack. These cracks were extremely terrifying, and they had seen it with their own eyes. A bird-type king-level blood fiend crashed into one of the cracks and was immediately minced into minced meat. This island is obviously not a relic from the Empire's era. It's very likely left behind by a force hundreds or thousands of times stronger than the Empire. I have a feeling that if we can enter this island, we will have amazing gains. An elder from the Scarlet Kingdom looked at the island in the sky with burning eyes. Impossible. Those cracks that appear from time to time around the crack are spatial cracks. No one can enter the crack and get close to the island. I'm afraid even magic light masters can't. A king-level master from the Jewel Kingdom looked at his reattached left arm and said with lingering fear. A few days ago, when he tried to get close to the island, his arm was accidentally grazed by a crack that suddenly appeared. Before he could react, his arm was already cut off. At that moment, he almost thought that he was going to die. Fortunately, the spatial crack that appeared did not spread to other parts of his body except for his arm, so he was able to escape with his life. Since it's impossible, why are you still here? Not far away, a king-level master from the Flame Kingdom sneered. You don't have to worry about that. Your Flame Kingdom, on the other hand, doesn't have the right to stay here. The opportunities here don't belong to your Flame Kingdom. The Jewel Kingdom king-level master snorted coldly. Do you want to fight again? If you want, we'll accompany you to the end. A king-level expert from the Flame Kingdom sneered disdainfully. Then let's fight again. In the Jewel Kingdom, there were king-level experts who were equally unyielding. Rumble. With a loud bang, the golden flames streaked across the sky like a meteor, leaving behind a long, scorched trail. It wasn't the two king-level masters fighting. The commotion came from outside. At the end of the charred marks, a black-haired young man in tattered clothes got up. It was Gray. His body was in a sorry state, but he didn't suffer any serious injuries. On the other side of the scorched marks was Nick Blaze, who was holding a golden spear with golden flames wrapped around it. His handsome face was overflowing with murderous intent. On the way to the corresponding area of the island, Gray's team once again encountered Nick Blaze's team. However, this time, Nick Blaze's team had grown bigger. They had joined up with the two teams from the Flame Kingdom, and they had even more people than Gray's team. Nick Blaze, who felt that he had the upper hand, attacked Gray's team. Sophia, Francis, and even Stanley Grinton were all entangled with the people from the Flame Kingdom. As for Gray, he was targeted by Nick Blaze, who continued the unfinished battle from before. Gray Fergus died. The golden spear in Nick Blaze's hand shone even brighter. Then, the golden flames spewed out and turned into the sharp claws of a giant beast, grabbing at Gray. You think you can do it? Gray swung his sword, and the black mist turned into a river that was dozens of meters wide. It surged violently and met the incoming flaming claws, while he retreated quickly. Poof! Without exception, the black mist was torn apart by the flaming claws. The flaming claws grabbed at Gray, who was behind the black mist. Although Gray was already dodging, he was still hit by the giant claws, and his body flew backward. Tui, after spitting out the crushed ice in his mouth, Gray got up. There was another wound on his body, but it wasn't serious. Unless he used blood skills at the risk of injury or used a powerful magic weapon, Nick Blaze wouldn't be able to seriously injure him in a short period of time. What a strong defense! The battle between the two naturally fell into the eyes of the King-class experts from both sides. Seeing Gray's strong defense, the King-class expert from the Purple Moon Kingdom showed slight approval, while the King-class experts from the Flame Kingdom had cold gazes. He can actually contend with Niklos. If we don't kill him, he'll definitely become an obstacle to the Flame Kingdom in the future. One of the Flame Kingdom's experts pointed at Gray. His golden hair had already turned white, and his face was full of vicissitudes of life. His eyes suddenly revealed killing intent. Whoosh! Under his finger, a golden flame shot out. It was only the size of a basketball, but it condensed an extremely terrifying power. This was an extremely condensed flame. The ice and snow on the ground along the way melted and evaporated. A trail that was dozens of meters wide appeared, extending straight toward Gray. Being targeted by such a terrifying attack, Gray's scalp went numb in an instant, and cold sweat dripped down. I can't dodge or block it. Without thinking, Gray knew that he definitely couldn't dodge or block this attack. Although his current defense was enough to make it difficult for a level 2 Desolation grade to seriously injure him, the gap between him and a King-class expert was still too large. If Stanley Grinton was here, he could have asked Stanley Grinton to block it for him. Unfortunately, Stanley Grinton was entangled with a level 3 Desolation grade expert from the Flame Kingdom and wasn't here. You really think that there's no one in the Purple Moon Kingdom? The Purple Moon Kingdom's King-class expert, Fitch Violet, snorted coldly, his white hair flying in the wind. He also pointed a finger. A purple flame appeared, bringing with it a terrifying temperature that wasn't any weaker than the former. It intercepted the golden flame midway. Boom! Even though the explosion was quite far away, the aftermath of the explosion still left scratches on Gray's body. It was easy to imagine what would have happened if the explosion had landed on Gray's body. According to Gray's judgment, not only were these two King-class experts, but they weren't the weakest among them. They were likely King-class experts who had evolved once or twice. After escaping, Gray's back was drenched in sweat. Afraid that another King-class expert from the Flame Kingdom would attack, he quickly approached the group of King-class experts from the Purple Moon Kingdom. When he arrived in front of Fitch Violet, he thanked him solemnly. "Thank you, Lord Fitch. It's only been a few months, and you've grown quite a bit." Looking at Gray, Fitch Violet nodded and smiled. During the Three Kingdom exchange a few months ago, he knew how strong Gray was. He definitely couldn't compete with a second-level Desolate Grade expert. But now, Gray was actually able to compete with a second-level Desolate Grade expert. Even he couldn't help but be slightly surprised by such a rapid growth. As for the other King-class experts from the Purple Moon Kingdom, they all looked at Gray curiously. They had heard of Gray and knew that Gray had a bloodline affinity constitution, but they had never seen Gray in action. Although the battle between Gray and Niklos Blaze hadn't been long, they had seen Gray's strength. He was indeed extraordinary. At such a young age, he already had the strength to compete with a second-level Desolate Grade expert. Lord Tefuni, Lord Fitch, not long after, Francis, Sophia, and the others arrived. Everyone in the group was injured. Obviously, they were at a disadvantage against the Flame Kingdom, who had more people than them. Some were even seriously injured. Fortunately, there were no casualties. On the other side, the King-class experts from the Flame Kingdom also arrived to meet up with the King-class experts from the Flame Kingdom. It wasn't just Gray's group and Niklos Blaze's group. After that, teams from the Purple Moon Kingdom, Scarlet Kingdom, Gem Kingdom, and Flame Kingdom arrived one after another. 4 dead. After counting the number of people from their respective kingdoms, the Purple Moon Kingdom had a total of 4 dead, while the Scarlet Kingdom, Gem Kingdom, and Flame Kingdom had all lost people. Some of the King-class experts from both sides were enraged. They almost started another King-class battle, but in the end, they suppressed it. The two sides faced each other from a few miles away, and this confrontation lasted for a few days. After a few days, both sides tried many methods to enter the island in the sky, but they all failed. A few King-class experts were even seriously injured. In the end, the King-class experts from both sides didn't have much hope. However, since they had already arrived and knew that there must be a great opportunity inside, they were unwilling to leave just like that. Thus, both sides were in a deadlock. Another reason why they were unwilling to leave was that both sides noticed that the white spire in the center of the island was becoming brighter and brighter. They had a feeling that there would be changes soon. The white spire is changing. One day, someone subconsciously looked at the white spire in the sky and couldn't help but cry out in surprise. The white spire in the center of the island was actually emitting a golden light. There was a hint of gold in the white light. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A king-class expert immediately soared into the sky. Outside the spatial crack, he observed the white spire closely. A rune mechanism has been activated, but it's too complicated. I've never seen it before, so I can't determine its use. A king-class expert who is also a rune master said. The golden patterns continued to change. Everyone couldn't help but look at the sky, at the spire. Whoosh! Suddenly, the golden patterns on the white spire paused. Then, a ray of white light suddenly shot out from the top of the spire. It broke through the spatial crack and finally landed on the ground, leaving behind a white light that was dozens of square meters in diameter.